with or without the mic, which I now call to order. Thank you, Alan. I now invite everybody to stand and join us in singing "O Canada." Thank you, everyone. Please be seated. Madam Clerk, I see we have no regrets. Council, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Madam Clerk, I see none. Oh, wait. I find one. Councillor Giddings declared a pecuniary interest with respect to Schedule 17, flyer distribution of Item 4, licensing bylaw of the Administration of the Administrative Services Committee report, September 14, 2015, as a result of income from his previous employer. Thank you, Councillor Giddings.
Thank
we'll separate that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, it's as Metroland is a wholly owned subsidiary of Torstar, and I have a pension from Torstar. I declared the pecuniary interest.
Thank you for your declaration. Council, you have before you the minutes of previous council meetings on August 10th and August 8th. Are you satisfied with the minutes? And if so, is there a mover and seconder? Councillor Hutchins, Councillor Knoll, all in favor? Opposed, if any? The minutes are adopted as presented. We have no public presentations this evening, but we do have 4 registered delegations. And the first one, it's my pleasure to call Henry Verschuren for the Lawrence Scots Peel, Dufferin and Halton Regiment. And this is an interesting and good matter. Mr. Verschuren, Council looks forward to your information. And we'll get you set up. Thank you. And please take up to 10 minutes.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council members. It's a pleasure for me to be here on behalf of the Lawrence Scots Regiment. You have on your screens in front of you a bit of a PowerPoint. I'm going to take you through this. The background of our proposal to you this evening is that most communities in Canada since the Boer War times have gifted to their local regiments and erected memorials dedicated to that regiment for their service to the country, particularly with respect to the service of the members of that community. Currently, the Lawrence Scots Peel, Dufferin and Halton Regiment has a home in Brampton, Oakville and Georgetown. We have an armory here and have had since the inception of the regiment. Currently, there does not exist a regimental memorial to the Lawrence Scots in any Canadian community. So that's the background of why we're here tonight. And he told me how to do this, and I I hit the wrong button. Okay, all right, thank you. I'd like to talk about next year. The year 2016 marks the 150th anniversary of the Lawrence Scots Regiment. In that year, a new battle honor will be added to our regimental colors for Afghanistan, and we are in the final stages of consideration for a battle honor for the War of 1812. Now, I point that out specifically because the members of the regiment who were involved in the War of 1812 came mainly from this community. And so it is now, it's gone all the way up the ladder, and it's now in the hands of the Chief of the Defense Staff, who only has to sign off on it. We're confident that because it's gone that high, that far, that it won't be turned down at this point. So hopefully we'll be adding that as well. We have made significant contributions to Canada's war and peacekeeping efforts throughout its history, from the War of 1812 right up to Afghanistan. And the Afghanistan conflict, of course, has been the longest conflict in Canadian history. The picture that you see here is not a file picture. Those soldiers are actually Lawrence Shots on duty in Afghanistan. 2016 will mark observances and ceremonies throughout the year, ending with the presentation of colours ceremony in the last 2 weeks of September. Our Colonel-in-Chief is His Royal Highness the Duke of Kent, Field Marshal Prince Edward. He's been invited to visit the regiment at this time, and although he cannot officially respond at this point, he's expressed a great personal interest in doing so. Now, let me explain what that means. Because he's a member of the royal family, he cannot officially commit until 6 months before the function. But at this point in time, he has put it in his schedule. We have met with him in April at the Tower of London, and he again reiterated his intention to come. I mention that because it factors into what we're proposing. We're proposing that the Brampton, Oakville, and Georgetown gift to the regiment a memorial. In a prominent location, we're thinking George Park here in Oakville, close to the cenotaph. The timing of the monument are that they're to be completed and in place and unveiled as part of the September 2016 150th anniversary. It is pending anything going wrong. His Royal Highness has already indicated that he would be very happy to come to Oakville. He's been here before, remembers this community fondly, and he would be very happy to do the unveiling at that time. But again, we need the official announcement. Timing for this is that the monuments are meant to be completed and in place, ready to be unveiled at the last weekend in September. The contractors that we've talked to, the builders, have indicated that they need 6 months from contract signing to installation to get this done. So we're ahead of schedule here. The design. It's going to be 6 feet high. Now let me put that in perspective for you. I'm 6 feet high. So we're not talking about a big, massive thing. One of the reasons for this, it's going to have a 4 by 4 foot base. So 4 by 4, 6 feet high, okay? Nothing could ever outshadow a cenotaph. And that's not the intention of this monument, okay? Its primary design will feature 2 columns located at the rear portion. The columns stand for one for duty, the other one for honor. There will be brass inplates onto the columns that will include all the battle honors of the regiment. And close to the top will be, as you see on the screen, the regimental cap bags. Here's a picture of that. There'll be a smaller column in the front. The wording on that will be dedicated to the soldiers of the Lawrence Cox, Peel, Dufferin, and Halton Regiment for their 150 years of service to our community and our country, 1866 to 2016. And of course, around that base, there'll be various regimental insignia also in bronze. Here is a picture of a model. It's a very open design. Again, it's not huge, but what this design does is allows for further battle honors to be added in the future. If they're necessary, you can go down the back of those columns, etc. So it's basically, it's like a white marble or a white granite with the bronze working on it. Now, the big question, what's the cost? I have advanced to the town clerk a couple of months ago a handout, a booklet that contains quotes from 3 builders that we got. The one that we chose seemed to have an outrageously high price compared to the others, but $62,000. But they were quoting for all 3 monuments. So it actually works out to a little over $20,000 per. okay? But that quote also includes building the foundation and the installation. The other two talked about installation but didn't talk about foundation. But if the city's going to get into a contract with the builder, you'll do your own due diligence and pick whoever you want. Contract will be executed after council approval between the contractor and the respective city or town, and of course, you'll have your own staff people involved. The funding for this is based on an economy of scale. It's a lot cheaper to build 3 monuments identically than have 3 separate different ones and 3 separate, especially when it comes to the brass moldings. They only have to do 1 cast, and et cetera, so that'll be a lot easier. I have been in contact with the federal and provincial members here. They are anxious to contribute to this project. They cannot, however, start the ball rolling because there is no official approval yet of the project by council. But they will have given me their assurances that they will do everything they can to obtain one-third funding, respectively, for this monument in Oakville. Now, that means they're going to try, and see what they can do. We have a team that is assembled in both jurisdictions. The federal team will be headed by Mr. Kyle Sheback, MP in Brampton, provided everything works out on October 19th for him. I believe he's already written, Your Worship, indicating his very strong support and his commitment to see this through. And so once this level gets done, then we'll set the ball rolling with the provincial and the federal. I can tell you where we're at in our sister jurisdictions. Brampton is submitting a staff report later early next month to their town council. It's been before council already. If the report is favorable, and I have every reason to believe it will, they'll do their final vote and approve it. And the same thing is happening with Halton Hills, who do their final vote on October 17th. Are there any questions that I can answer?
Thank you very much for the presentation. Council, are there questions? Thank you very much, Mr. Henry.
Thank you.
Mr. Verschuren, we're going to refer this to our budget.
Absolutely.
And I promise you that it'll be given very serious consideration. And I'll work with you on a letter to get the ball rolling.
I appreciate that, Your Worship, and thank you, Council.
Thank you very much for the presentation. The next registered delegation for Council tonight is Habib Khan, who's here for the licensing bylaw, item 4 on the Administrative Services Committee meeting agenda of September 14th, 2015. Mr. Khan, welcome. Council looks forward to your information. And
Thank you.
Please take up to 10 minutes.
Sure. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and Honorable Member of the Council. I will be very brief in this regard of the driving school business. Right now, as you see, we are going through difficult economic times. People are losing jobs, the manufacturing sector is down, and obviously we have newcomers in this city. So apparently, right now, the fee for the driving instruction for a year is about $500. But the licensing department, and 20 years ago, the fee was $50 a year. So the fee went from $20 to $500, and now the licensing department wants to increase it another fee of $479 to make it close to $1,000, which I think will be a bit hard for the part-time operators, for the one-car people, and the people who are already in difficulty. So my request is to kindly not to increase any fee and make it easy for the new businesses. Now the second thing is about the licensing department wants to set the age of the car about 7 years, that it should be replaced after 7 years. Now again, the cars these days are costing close to $25,000, and they have a dual controls in it. And now this makes it very difficult for people who are in the part-time, people who are one car operator, they're just barely making ends meet. And to set a limit, and no other jurisdiction, no other town, city not only in Ontario, all over Canada has that kind of limit. Now, the third thing is, the question here arises is that how we see that who is part-time person and who is full-time person. That becomes difficult to answer. Now, I have done some study, and I noted that the average car owner who is not in the driving business of any sort, of any delivery or any teaching or anything like that, who is just going to work, coming back from his office and does his shopping and for recreation and all that, he puts in the GTA close to 25,000 kilometers per year on the average. On the other hand, a full-time driving school person who works full-time in this business, 8 hours a day and 5 or 6 days a week, goes up to around 50,000 kilometers a year. So if somebody is putting less than 25,000 kilometers, obviously should qualify as a part-time driving person, and he should get the break. And now the city also requires, the town requires that the car should be certified every year. Now again, for full-time people, fine. If they are going over 25,000 kilometers, it is fine if they, it should be certified. But if somebody is driving under 25,000 kilometers, maybe they're driving 10,000 or less than 25,000, I think, again, the requirement of certification should not be there, because that will be an additional expense for them to bear. So these are my concerns in this regard, and I think the city, you honorable members, should consider these important factors for the newcomers, for the people who are part-time. It makes it easy for them. And our neighboring town, Burlington, has already done these things. They have no fee for the registration, no requirement for certification, and so on. Thank you very much, Your Honor. I very much appreciate the opportunity of speaking, and I hope that you will consider all these.
Thank you for your information, Mr. Khan. Are there questions for Mr. Khan? Councillor Elgar.
At this point, I think I've got Mr. Khan's questions. I'm wondering, will we wait until we get to the item to have staff respond to those questions? That's fine. I just want to make sure I got them all. So you don't have a problem with the $500 fee, but you don't want the $479 extra.
Obviously, that will.
And is that across every driving school, that it should be that way, that everybody just pays $500?
I think that will be fine. Everybody should pay 500, is because 500 is not a small fee. It used to be, as I said, 20 years ago, it was $50. So if you look from that point of view, the inflation is only 2%, and from 50 to 500 it is already significant. And if we further jump it to 1,000, that will really be difficult. So I think this should be across the board. It should not be increased.
Okay, so we'll get the answer from staff on that as to how they come up with their additional $479. The year of the car, you got an issue with that?
Yeah, that's right. The year of the car, as I said, they are saying 7th year. And now this kind of requirement is not in anywhere in any city. And it makes it very difficult, as I mentioned, that especially for those who are part-time, they cannot afford to, replace it after 7 years. They have to, because these cars have a dual controls in it, and that costs another up to, $800-900. And that will be very, very difficult to keep replacing. And then those people are putting like less than 25,000 kilometers, and in 7 years, it's like 150,000, 175,000, and you want them to change the car. I think it doesn't make sense.
So, there's no place in Ontario that has such a ruling, you're saying?
No, nobody in Ontario has such a
Nobody in
rule.
Ontario?
No, not only in Ontario, in anywhere in Canada. There's
Okay.
no limit on the car, the age of the car,
Okay, or the kilometers.
or the kilometer, exactly.
Yeah, I'm having trouble with understanding the 25,000 a year versus the 50,000 a year. Like, is that how you're looking at scaling everything?
No,
based
what I'm
on
saying is that
kilometers?
the average person in GTA drives about 25,000 kilometers, like you and me, for example. We go to our office, we come back, and then we have a recreational driving, we go for shopping and so on. So about 25,000 in GTA. So what I'm saying is, and on the other hand, the average full-time driving person is 50,000 kilometer.
Now, do
In
you know that for a fact?
in that ballpark, like it could be 40, it could be 60. Like some people last time when we were in this meeting, they were saying that that it is more than 50,000.
Okay,
So
okay, good enough, I'll get that
Yeah,
answered. And the certification? You don't want
yeah, and
any
the
no
certification, for especially for the part-time people, because I mean, if somebody is putting less than 20K, 25K, he should not be certifying it. Yes, if somebody is putting over 25K, if the certification the city thinks is necessary, probably it may be okay. But I think for the part-time people, it will be very difficult. One car operator, part-time, should get the break. Even the regular fee, which is 500, I think for a part-time person, it should be 50%, if it is a one car operator.
Okay, we'll get answers to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ellen.
Councillor Knoll.
Councillor Ellen, thank you very much.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to our delegate,
Mr. Khan?
Mr. Khan?
Councillor Knoll has a question for you. You're a popular man tonight.
Sorry.
Thank you. Do you require, you're licensed by the province as well, correct?
Yes, yes.
So explain that process.
Yeah, you see, the way it works is, to become a driving instructor, you have to get the license from the Ministry of Transportation, Ontario. And they send you to the college, and you pass their exam. It used to be Ontario Safety League. See, I used to be driving instructor at one time. Like in 1977, I became driving instructor. At that time, it was just go to the Ministry of Transportation, and you study, you do the written exam, you do the road test, and then you go to the safety league and take a 2 weeks course, 1 week course at that time. So I myself have done it. I raised my family. The reason it was easy was that the city of Toronto at that time the fee was probably even less than $50 a year for that kind of thing. So I started this, but then obviously that was not my aim to continue this kind of thing. So I did it on part-time basis during the daytime. It allowed me the flexibility because this was not an expensive thing.
Yep.
So it created a self-employment for me, and it allowed me. So I did this during the daytime for 3-4 hours, just part-time. Then I attended the university.
Mr. Khan, with great respect, you've gone beyond my question.
Oh,
The question was, do you require licensing by the province? The answer is
Absolutely.
yes. Is it an ongoing license that has to be renewed annually?
Oh, it's renewed every 3 years.
Every 3 years? And how
Yeah,
much is that license?
How much is the fee for that license?
yeah.
It's about, it's probably less than $100, I think. I'm not sure what exactly it is, but it's not, it's same like driver's license, for example, we renew.
Do you have to requalify every 3 years, or do you simply just send your check in and you get your certificate?
No, because you have already taken this qualification, you have taken the.
Right, initially, but I'm saying like on an ongoing basis, do you continually have to requalify?
No.
You just have to keep it renewed.
You just renew it, you do the police check.
Right.
And that kind of requirement.
So the province requires a police check as well?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
yes.
and so that's the driver, correct?
That's the instructor.
The instructor. Does the school require a license as well?
No, only the city. The province doesn't.
Only from
give.
the city, only from the town?
Only from the town.
So, but the drivers are certified by the province, and then the town, the municipality is the only ones that certify the schools themselves?
Yeah, municipality, you have to register your school with them as a business license and
Yeah.
then do that.
Great, thank you so much, sir.
Very
Appreciate it.
welcome, sir, my pleasure.
Mr. Khan, hold on. Your popularity has not ended. Councillor Demoff.
Thank you very much. I wasn't, I sit on Community Services Committee, so I wasn't at the meeting the other night. But just looking through this, we had previously required a 7-year, no older than 7 years before. So
Yeah.
that hasn't changed, just the fact that if you get to 300,000 kilometers before the 7 years, that's the part that's changed.
No, apparently, I came to know last year that it was, they changed it. They eliminated that 7-year requirement, and now they want to bring it back. You're right, it used to be a few years back, and then it was gone, and then now they want to bring it back. kind of
Okay,
thing.
I'll check with staff then. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Khan. Now you are done. The next delegation is Bob Fenwick, the gardener. And this is also about licensing bylaw, item 4 on the Administrative Services Committee meeting agenda of September 14th. Mr. Fenwick, welcome. Council looks forward to your information.
Good evening, Your Worship and councillors. Last week I had an opportunity to appear at the ASC, and there was a lot of discussion, and there's been a fair bit of discussion over the past few days. Some of the licensing bylaw categories have been changed, modified, grouped, split, but a new category involves landscapers and property maintenance contractors. Now, this category has become perhaps the largest category on the whole list, because it's including the old category of driveway contractors, fence builders, every lawn care specialist in the city, everyone who does construction of the fabulous landscapes that you see in our lovely town. Now, the problem with this big category is that there's every type of employee that falls within that category. You have large construction firms, and you have quite a few small part-time lawn care people who go around with one truck, one crew, and cut some lawns on an ongoing basis, probably for 7 months of the year, 6 months of the year, and that's their job. Now, what the new bylaw is asking them to do is be in the same bucket as the large landscape contractor, the same bucket as the large fence contractor and paving operation. And $507, quite frankly, to a lot of these small guys, represents a huge chunk of profit or earnings, and frankly, it doesn't seem to be fair. Now, what I'm proposing is that the massive category be broken down based on the type of work they do and perhaps the type of equipment that they do as part of their work. Now, there's a very clear definition used in the bylaws, that being what is a construction equipment. And I maintain that the small firms that do not use the defined construction equipment, that being bobcats, drillers, diggers, large power machinery, should not be part of this licensing exercise. They should be excluded because the reason that they're working is to beautify the city. It's a part-time, often a smaller part-time job, but it just doesn't have the same type of problems that the bylaw department is trying to control. Now, the comeback is that there is noise produced by anyone that's cutting or maintaining properties. The noise that is produced is emanating from what's called domestic tools, which fall under the various noise restrictions that are contained in the noise bylaw. Now, no one wants to hear the next door neighbor cutting the grass, but if it's within the time frame that you're allowed to cut, and it's within the thresholds, then they aren't doing anything wrong. Now, it's those complaints that have caused the bylaw department to perhaps react by thinking that they have to include all these categories into the same big bylaw grouping under the same schedule. So the The point of having it so large makes it simple, but in practice, you're really putting a lot of extra expense and administrative problems on the backs of very small, hardworking people within the town. Now, to speak to a second item, there was within the current bylaw, it covers snow removal. Well, did you know that one of the clauses states that you are not to throw, pile, store, or cause snow or ice to be thrown, piled, or placed across or on a municipal right-of-way. Well, we all know you're not supposed to plow the snow onto the street. But the municipal right-of-way includes, I believe, the parcel of land between the street and essentially the water valve up on your lawn. So any and every person who shovels or plows snow would be in contravention of that particular clause, because we're not allowed to plow or put or shovel snow onto the side of the road. That doesn't make sense. What I have proposed, and it may come forth later on in the meeting, is to adopt a more realistic clause that addresses the real problem. We don't want snow piled up high on the side of the road that's going to obstruct visibility. We don't want it on the sidewalks. We don't want it piled out on the street, but we just like it nice and neat. So if the snow was deposited so as not to obstruct access to any fire hydrant, no snow or ice shall be deposited upon the traveled portion of a highway or sidewalk, and in no event shall snow or ice be placed so as to interfere with the safe passage of vehicles, pedestrians, or obstruct the visibility of vehicle operations or pedestrians. Now, there's another clause. That covers the snow. There's a clause that prevents us from putting little plants at the end of our property close to the road, because that little section of land falls within the municipal right-of-way, and we're not allowed to put ground cover, mulch, periwinkle, or any other little stuff in there, because it falls in the category of plant material. The point of the clause, I believe, was to prevent someone putting up a fence, putting up a large shrub that's going to be a safety issue. But that's not what it says. It says nothing. It says nothing should go there. So in parallel to the snow, I believe the plant material could be treated the same way, allowing for homeowners to beautify the front of their property and not be in contravention of any laws around the city. Many of those homeowners have landscapers. We maintain that section of land, but by maintaining it, the way this is written, we would be contravening the law, and we could get a big fine. I don't like that. I don't think that's the intent of the bylaw, but that's the way it currently is written. Okay, last item is last meeting, or at least a week ago, I identified a discrepancy between the noise bylaw and the use of domestic tools, in that the licensing bylaw had a 7 o'clock restriction, whereas the noise bylaw had a 9 o'clock restriction. At the time, it wasn't clear how it was going to pan out, but I understand the correction is going to be made, and I'm pleased to see that. So, in closing, We have a lot of hardworking small businesses. They're almost all local, owned, operated. They live here, they work here, and they shouldn't be put in the same category as large construction companies. That's my
Thank you
point.
very much for your information. I've taken notes about each of them, and I can tell you that members of council have been asking questions about these things, prompted perhaps by your earlier presentation last week.
Thank you.
And before I use up all the time, Councillor Adams has a question for you.
Thanks for the earlier conversation on the side there. Can you just help, I just want to make sure I'm getting your point correctly. The issue of separating the lawn and snow management issues, do you believe they should be separated on an equipment basis? Is that what you're saying?
The problem is how to segregate.
Yeah.
You can segregate this way or this way. If you segregate by size of the company, well, that's not really fair. You can have large lawn care companies, you can have small lawn care. Why would one be treated than the other? But there is a way of segregating based on what type of work they do. And it's such a broad category that you could easily have a large-scale type construction category and a maintenance category. What I discovered in my research was that in the surrounding communities, I could not find anybody who licenses landscapers. Landscaping firms are not licensed. Lawn care are not licensed. And I know Oakville likes to be progressive, but I'm not sure this is what we had in mind.
So, you believe they should just be completely removed from the licensing?
I do.
Okay. And that would deal with any kind of equipment, whether it's tractor mowers or hand, push mowers or anything?
Those fall in the category of domestic tools as opposed to backhoes and grading equipment. So yes.
I'm not sure if I read our definition here that it actually differentiates. It's the what you're doing, not how you're doing it, that appears to be captured here.
Say that again.
As I read our current bylaw description, I read it as being irrelevant as to what kind of machine you're using. But from your perspective, you don't care. You just think that if you're doing lawn care, you shouldn't have to get a license.
The reason behind it is all about controlling problems. That's why
Yeah.
we're doing this. And bigger machinery creates bigger problems. It's going to be drainage issues. It's going to be putting a fence in the wrong place. It's not whether the grass clippings have been blown onto the other guy's lawn.
Yep. Okay. Then I had one question for you about the plant material issue. As I understand it, we have a public process for adopting boulevards. Have you ever encountered that?
On Cornwall, yes?
Okay, but you haven't encountered it with respect to a private individual?
No.
Okay, then I'll leave off that and I'll bring that to our staff. Thank you very much. I
Okay.
appreciate the conversation.
You're not done. Councillor Elgar would like some of your time.
Thank you very much for coming and advising us of your issues. Are you the representative for Fenwick Associates, or is that a totally different company?
That was an old operation of mine. I'm with the gardener doing landscaping at this time.
Okay, because when I look, I realize that the revenue was $339,000 something a year on that company with 2 to 3 employees, and that's what I'm just wondering. Like, where do you get the balance when you say small time, 1 or 2 people? But the revenues are kind of shocking when I see what the company makes doing that type of work for 2 people.
Well, that, if we're talking about the gardener,
I'm talking about what you've got on the Fenwick Associates website.
I don't have a website.
It's got you as Fenwick Associates categorized under management services. Current estimates show the company has an annual revenue of $339,920 and employs a staff of approximately 3 people. That is you, so it says. No?
I can categorically tell you, and my wife will verify this, that there was no 339,000. There is an error there.
Okay. Are you on Ingledine Drive?
Yes.
Thank you. That's okay. Guess the.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's what.
Wonder
they've
where the
got
money
down.
went.
Yeah, no, that's what I was wondering. You know, it's a small operation.
Maybe you should give an allowance for marketing or something there.
Apparently. Thank you.
All right, any other questions for our delegation? Mr. Fenwick, thank you very much for your
Thank you
time
very
and your
much.
information. Council, the next registered delegation concerns a matter on the agenda that, out of an abundance of caution, I've decided to absent myself from the meeting to avoid any sign of personal involvement. And the acting mayor for this month is our new councillor, Councillor Lischina, and you'll be in good hands with her.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to call upon Mr. Gordon Brennan. Welcome, Mr. Brennan. You have 10 minutes for your delegation.
Sorry, I just passed 2 kidney stones, so I have to drink.
No problem. Please get started.
Yeah, I'm surprised I'm in here, but anyway. Okay, first of all, I just want to say for the record, there was an article in the paper from David Lee who said that I lashed out against town council. That's a little misleading. I did not lash out at you. I think some of you know me quite well enough to know that I'm not a lashing person. I have the greatest respect for all of you. This is nothing personal, so I don't lash out at people. That's not my style. So I just wanted to clear that up now. Okay, good evening. My thanks to Town Clerk Vicky Titanic and to all the councillors for making the effort tonight to hear and vote on this integrity request. 7 months ago, I stood on the same spot in front of all of you, and I asked you to do the right thing after I filed 8 separate integrity complaints. Tonight, I ask you to seriously consider bringing forth this one affidavit to Robert Swayze. I take no pleasure in coming here and ask you again to vote yes for another integrity complaint. I would much rather talk about the fabulous work you're all doing and performing in each of your individual wards. I know that many times your positive contributions go unnoticed or are underappreciated. Tonight, you have a unique opportunity to carry on your excellent work and equalize the playing field between the mayor's negative actions and your positive actions. Tonight, you can mark a historical moment in establishing a precedent towards justice. Tonight, you can prove wrong the hardcore political pundits who don't trust that you believe in democracy. Of the over 10,000 online comments about the mayor's tweets, this one comment stood out the most. On September 16th, Jason Shaw posted about tonight's integrity complaint. This will go nowhere. Oakville Town Council is a cult that follows their leader Burton at all costs. Wow. In the 21 years of living in Oakville, I've never heard of a town council referred to as a cult. I can't believe this is to be accurate. Many questions are now being asked by thousands of people. They include, are all Oakville residents like their mayor? Does the mayor ever seek advice on his social media habits from the Integrity Commissioner? After 9 years in office, is the mayor still unaware of the rules and procedures? How many potential jobs have been lost from new businesses who might now be hesitant to invest in Oakville? Back in February, I asked why all the integrity affidavits are being pre-screened by council, with all due respect, and essentially being judged and ruled upon prior to Mr. Swayze being allowed to read them. It is a fact that the Judicial Commission by Justice Bellamy ruled that no town council should be pre-screening any integrity complaints. In fact, the question must be asked, is it not a conflict of interest that council predetermines the eligibility of any affidavit? I stand here in front of all of you tonight almost as if I were on some kind of trial, and you are judging me as if I did an egregious act by filing an affidavit. I am performing a right given to all Oakville citizens to expect open and transparent municipal governments. The question really becomes, why do we employ an integrity officer with taxpayer dollars if he never gets to read any affidavits? There is no other motivation to stand here before you and ask for an inquiry except to enhance democracy and justice for actions that have been extremely damaging to Oakville and her identity. My one and only concern has and always will be for the preservation of the goodwill of Oakville. My intent in this affidavit is to seek the enforcement of the rules, laws, and guidelines that are set out by the Province of Ontario and this Council. Oakville and her citizens must always come first and foremost, especially when its identity is threatened by the Mayor's actions. I wish to make one point perfectly clear and for the record. This integrity complaint is not about me. In fact, Councillor Knoll said I was being political and vexatious. This recent affidavit is supported by thousands of people who want restitution, for the rule of the law to be a top priority. These thousands want no one above the law. While my affidavit is not calling for the Mayor to resign, thousands of other citizens have and still are. Tonight, as councillors, don't be fearful to vote based on your conscience. I received telephone calls telling me that I was brave to ask for this integrity and go before all of you. I'm not brave. It's easy to do what's right for Oakville. Having said that, it must be quite difficult for you to have to always be one step ahead of the next scandal or controversy. You have to really work hard and expend a great deal of time and energy to spin doctor scandals or maintain a cover-up. It's so much easier to be proactive, upfront, honest, and transparent, and you're not tripping over yourself to try and stay out of trouble. Mayor Rob Burton is a human being, just like the rest of us. Humans make mistakes, but consequences to our actions are part of the learning curve. My father was a World War II veteran. He was a captain of a motor torpedo boat. He fought for our freedom. My mother is a sole survivor of the Holocaust. She was liberated by veterans. Because she survived, I was in turn adopted by her and kept from being placed in children's aid. I'm a man who does not believe in labels on people. I'm a man who does not believe in political ideology. I do believe that we are all product of our life experiences. Labeling our Canadian veterans as mercenaries and Nazi brown shirts crosses the line. Many people state you cannot trust politicians, and they all speak with the intent to deceive or mislead us. I have had the honor to experience many career political leaders in private, one-on-one environments who have shown that they can be honest, caring, and compassionate human beings. And yes, these individuals include Liberals, such as Pam Damoff, Kevin Flynn, and Premier Kathleen Wynne. Tonight, it's your turn to prove to all of Oakville that you are part of the public trust. Finally, should I not pay my property taxes for a year, no matter what the reason, Mayor Rob Burton will power sale my home to pay off the back taxes. If I apologize to him for not paying, he will be thankful for my sincere apology, but he'll still go ahead and sell my house to pay the taxes. This integrity inquiry follows the same premise. The facts of this complaint are clear. The mayor created and posted tweets and comments that were in violation of the Code of Conduct and the social media guidelines. The resulting media firestorm was swift and extremely embarrassing to every Oakville resident because the mayor is the official spokesperson for this town. Mayor Rob Burton's tweets and comments were all considered official social media and not just personal tweets from an individual. Mayor Rob Burton has been actively engaging in Liberal Party partisan activities online and in person for 8.5 years. This is totally against the AMO guidelines. Should you vote no tonight, you are potentially stating that your loyalty to the mayor supersedes your loyalty to Oakville and her citizens. Please vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brennan. I'm going to ask council if there are any questions for our delegate. Yes, Councillor Knoll.
Mr. Brennan, you state that his actions are against AMO guidelines. What are AMO guidelines?
When I took the when I took the course, when I was a mayor candidate, I took the online course, and it very clearly stated in the AMO guidelines that all councillors, and especially the mayor, are to be nonpartisan at all times.
But you understand AMO is a trade organization for municipalities, right? There's no guidelines that govern the actions of council.
Well, the AMO guidelines to me read that you were supposed to be nonpartisan. So I read that verbatim, that nonpartisan activities are against their guidelines.
I think those are more suggestions. I'd just also like to explore, you put a lot of weight on town bylaws or town corporate policies with respect to social media. Can you cite specifically what guideline did you believe the mayor's contravened?
Okay, Town of Oakville procedure number AISS 002/002, which states official town social media sites must not be used to promote individual political opinions. Guidelines for the use of social media. The following guidelines should be applied to both personal and corporate use of social media. Once material is posted, it can never be
Okay,
fully
thank you.
removed.
Can you read the first line again?
Guidelines for the use of social media?
Yeah,
The following guidelines should be applied to both personal and corporate use of social media.
No, go back. You talked about the official town media sites.
Yeah, official town social media sites
Okay,
must not be used. Okay, yeah, he
Right.
used a Twitter account, but
But is that
it's considered official
why do you think it's considered?
because it says
official?
Oakville Mayor on it.
Right, but
all
does
the
it,
time.
does it say town, is it branded with the corporate logo, or does it anywhere, does it say this is an official site?
No, but the premise is that it's official from the Oakville Mayor. And it is very clear that the mayor is the official spokesperson for the town and this will also apply to social media. It's in the guidelines.
But it's prefaced by official social media. And you're resting your complaint on the fact this is an official social media account. I
Okay.
have a social media account that says Councillor Knoll. Is that official town? Is that an official
The
town?
premise
website?
is that you're a counselor and you're officially speaking as Counselor Knoll, yes. I mean, now he says it's a personal account. He's changed his account, that's true. He's gone ahead and changed his Oakville Mayor account to now saying this is a personal account and to reference the Town of Oakville Twitter account as something different. He's done that now,
Right.
after the tweets that he made. But for 8.5 years, it's always been Oakville Mayor, and everybody's assumed that
Well, I
that
think
is the
I
official
think it
spokesperson.
still is Oakville Mayor, is it not?
Yes, it still says Oakville Mayor, yeah.
Okay. Have you seen him tweet on things other than official town business on that Twitter site?
Yes.
Like what kind of things?
Many things contrary to the guidelines about the Conservative Party. Against anything conservative, he's always been tweeting against it.
Okay. And what about, so if you're reading that as being an official social media site?
It's not me, it's the public. It's not just me
No,
personally.
you're the one making the allegations, so I'm talking about you tonight. So if Oakville Mayor is an official Twitter website of the town of Oakville, does that mean that Councillor Knoll or Councillor Lischenna or any of the other sites that are honorific as part of the social media banner, or what do we call it, the URL or the handle, would those be official as well, in your estimation?
I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know. I'm following the guidelines that are here.
But you're interpreting the guidelines. The guidelines say official town social media sites. So you're interpreting what that says, and you're implying your interpretation on the mayor's Twitter handle or Twitter site.
Well, the Twitter handle is a registered company somewhere else. It's not going to have the Oakville Town corporate seal on it. So
Right.
I understand where you're trying to go with this, but there is a difference between, what he says personally and what he says as the Oakville Mayor, but the premise is under the assumption that his Twitter account was official. So I can see where this is trying to go, but he's the official spokesperson.
Yeah,
So whether or not his
I
corporate
would be
seal on it
clear,
doesn't
and
matter.
I don't mean to be argumentative, I just want to make a statement. I don't like what he tweeted. I'll be perfectly honest with you.
And I appreciate that.
Yeah, I don't like what he tweeted at all. He knows how I feel about it. I've had a conversation with him. But I also don't buy the fact that councillors and mayors and other politicians are somehow restricted their rights to speak openly and freely about things that they feel strongly about. There are councillors and mayors running in this federal election today. There are councillors sitting at the table that's running in this federal election today. There are mayors. Mayor Denshi, probably one of the best mayors in Canada, tweets openly about political matters on his Twitter site.
Okay.
I just don't see how we, even as a corporation, would have the right to restrict the mayor.
I'm not asking for restrictions. I'm only asking that the disciplinary actions, as stated in your own guidelines, be met forth. I'm personally not asking him to resign, and it doesn't matter whether I think he should or not. It's irrelevant. But his tweets, which you just said you disagreed with, which of course is obvious, but they should have some kind of action, some kind of consequence.
But why?
Because it was disparaging to Oakville, and it made us look really bad. It was on the front page of every newspaper, so that's the problem. It's not about him personally, because I have nothing against him personally, or you for that matter. You know that I've liked you for years. But the problem is, it's Oakville.
Well, we should probably look at your blog and see how much you like me. But anyway, thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Councillor Knoll. Councillor Demoff?
Two questions. We dealt with an Integrity Commission report some time ago where they did look into whether or not the mayor could use the name Oakville Mayor, and they had determined that yes, he could. So that part of it was already investigated by the integrity officer and came back with a report. So I just want to make sure you're aware of the process. So even if we send it to the Integrity Commissioner, it comes back to us and we determine what the punishment is. So in your mind, we have no power under the Municipal Act to ask the mayor to resign. So what are you thinking that we should be putting out here as punishment as a council against the mayor for what he did?
Censure, reprimand of salary, reprimand, you know.
Mr. Brennan, yes, please stand by the mic.
Censure, reprimand, and the salary, non-payment of salary up to 90 days.
Okay, and so an apology and changing his Twitter account and those kind of things that we could have asked for, he's already done, right?
Yeah, the apology was necessary, obviously. At first, he wasn't apologizing, then he did. I mean, again, that's not for me to decide, because you hold the power, not me.
We don't have people talk from the gallery, so we'll, excuse me.
Could I have the chair call order to the chamber, please? We have a speaker in front of us.
Yes. Those who are not delegates currently, please do not speak. We have a councillor asking our delegate, and that is the person answering the question.
That was all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Demoff. We also have Councillor Grant. Mr. Brennan, please stay at the microphone.
Thank you. Good to see you. You feeling better?
I'm still in pain, but thanks for asking.
Just to the fact that we're talking about the Integrity Commissioner, and I don't think you'll find anybody at this table who is not, I'm trying not to use a harsh word, disappointed in what the mayor has tweeted. And certainly a lot of us feel that being partial is not a good way to be public. But nevertheless, when it comes to the Integrity Commissioner, and you've mentioned this a few times in the past as well, how can we block it? You realize that it was 2011 that actually Councillor Knoll and I were involved in an online petition for the Integrity Commissioner. We had several sorts of evidence, and it went forward. That was a few hours' work and about $10,000 that it cost the taxpayers. My concern as we look at this is that, and no offense, there's not as strong a case as we had, because there are some wiggle words in, is it public, is it private? And what we're looking at best, is a slap on the wrist. So I completely get that people are disappointed, they're mad, they're angry at the fact that they live in a town that this has happened, but are we $10,000 of taxpayer money mad?
It's a good point, and I kind of figured you might bring that up. I was going to make it part of my speech, but I decided not to, just in case. But I can tell you right now that I will crowdfund for that $10,000. I guarantee I will get that money, and I will personally donate 100% if it comes down to that, to make sure that that is paid for and it doesn't come out.
I'm not sure that we have a way that can be done. But even then, if there's anger in the community, there are other ways of doing it. And beyond what powers we have, again, we have to look at the fact that $10,000 could go to a lot of good things in the community, better than getting a slap on the wrist for somebody who's probably not going to get a slap on the wrist. So I'm just concerned about that. And the reason why we do have to decide these things is because with every kind of complaint that could come forward, if it just went straight to the commissioner, every time that's money going away every single time. And we have to be, you talk about doing what's best for Oakville, and Oakville must come first and foremost. We have to be the watchdogs of how that money gets spent. So that's kind of why this happens. So.
Yeah, okay, I'm not going to disagree with that. Money is important, but Yeah, it's back and forth between the money and the integrity thing, yeah.
And I get that. And certainly it would be, if we had more powers, I'm sure you'd see them flexed, more muscles, but this is what we have to work with.
Yeah.
This is our sandbox to play in.
No, I understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. Any other questions from councillors? Councillor O'Meara?
So I'd just like to clarify, Mr. Brennan, because I forget the comments that you had made in your original one, your original statement. If we don't vote to refer this to an integrity commissioner, was your comment that we are somehow, the word cult was brought up, which I'm not, so would that still be your assertion?
No, I didn't assert that. That was a quote from another gentleman who I did quote. It'll be in the public record. And he tweeted that you are a cult and you follow Brennan. I didn't say that.
Okay,
I don't assert that.
That's fine. I just wanted to be clear.
I was just as shocked to read that myself.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Meara. Any other questions? At this point, thank you very much, Mr. Brennan. We appreciate your conversation today. This meeting will now recess briefly to allow for the mayor to return to the meeting. If one of us can get them, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lischena. Council, I believe that brings us in our agenda to the standing committee reports. And as I understand it, we have a number of changes that we might consider in them. And in one particular case, there's a request from the committee that the entire council and the public at council be allowed to see the stormwater presentation. And I wonder if perhaps we should start with that. So, Darnell?
Let me fire this up here.
I'm pretty sure the rest of council and the public will be as riveted as we were at committee. This is a big deal.
Excellent, and thank you for that, Your Worship. Got it going. All right. Mr. Mayor, councillors, and citizens. Tonight, Mr. Philip Kelly and Ms. Christina Parker of the Development Engineering Department will present to you an update on Oakville's first ever Stormwater Master Plan. We did make this presentation on Monday night at Community Services Committee, and we're more than pleased to bring this back before you tonight. Like most master plans, this study will assess the current state of affairs and identify improvements to ensure our approach to stormwater and the supporting infrastructure continue to meet the needs of our growing and changing community and environment. We suspect you'll find this presentation both enjoyable and educational, and we look forward to engaging you in some questions. So without further ado, I would like to bring forward Mr. Philip Kelly, who will start our presentation. Thank you, Darnell. Good evening, Your Worship, and members of council. So I'm going to lead you through the first part of tonight's presentation, the first three topics being public-private responsibilities out there in the water resources world. I'm going to give you an overview of the evolution of stormwater management in Ontario. I'm going to touch on existing conditions in Oakville here. Then I'll turn it over to Christina Parker, who will talk about the Stormwater Master Plan itself and proposed next steps. First off, there's numerous water resources assets out there in Oakville and throughout Ontario. And so in this table, I've provided a list of them and who's responsible for what. So first off, I've got the sanitary sewer system. So the sanitary sewer system is what takes the sewage from your sinks and bathtubs, et cetera, away from your home. And that system is looked at and after by the region of Halton. A recent initiative with respect to the sanitary sewer system in the region of Halton
is this town flood prevention guideline that the region published last year and sent to, I believe, every household in Halton region. Then you have our town creeks, such as Bronte Creek and Joshua Creek, etc. So the flood lines along those creeks, because we all know creeks can flood, so the flood lines along those creeks are regulated by the local conservation authorities on behalf of the province of Ontario. So in Oakville here, that is Credit Valley Conservation for the Joshua Creek system, and all the other creeks are regulated by Conservation Halton. With respect to recent initiatives for our town creeks, we did the town-wide flood study in 2008, and then we've been following up with more detailed flood studies on each particular creek, and I'll get into more of that later. The next two items in this table is what the focus of the Stormwater Master Plan is about. That being our public storm sewer system, also known as the minor system or the pipe system under the streets, and our public overland flow system, also known as the major system. So our public storm sewer system, that is the pipes that are under the typical street and the ditches, and we, the town, look after those on our town-owned roads and easements. And then similarly, the region has some sewers on their system as well. Then you have our public overland flow routes, or overland flow system. We call that the major system, and we, the town, look after those on our rights of way, as does the region. Last but not least, there's a variety of privately owned water resources and stormwater assets out there in Oakville. So there's privately owned sewers on lots. There's some people own some of the older channels in town, and there's lot grading as well. So everything on the private side of the property line, if we, the town, don't have an easement, is the responsibility of the private property owner. A recent initiative in this area is since 2012, we've asked private property owners who take out a site alteration permit, because when you're doing site alteration, you can throw off the drainage on a lot. We've had the private property owners retain a qualified consultant, could be an engineer or a landscape architect, for example, to certify that the grading that they've undertaken at their lot doesn't have any negative impacts on their neighbors. And then the last point I want to leave you with this slide is that everything is connected to everything else. So although there's these distinct assets out there in Oakville, they can be very much interconnected. So for example, when we're doing the Stormwater Master Plan, we may find, we will find numerous low points on our major system. Now it could be that a portion of those low points have a sanitary sewer manhole. If that's the case, we have a situation where stormwater flows can pond on the road right away and get into the sanitary sewer system. If we see those situations, we'll bring those to the attention of the region of Halton. A little overview here, the sanitary sewer system. So I've taken this figure out of the region's guideline. So there's a little sketch of a street. You have the property line here. You have the private property over here. And then this reflects the public right-of-way. So on the public right-of-way, again, the region of Halton looks after the sanitary sewer. So most rights-of-way that are locally owned have a sanitary sewer system which takes the sewage away from your property. So if there's any problems on the main sewer or on the lateral within the public right-of-way, the region of Halton would look after that. Most streets in Oakville too also have a storm sewer on them, as well as the catch basin. Some homes, not all homes, but some homes actually have a storm lateral as well. Again, if there's any problems with this system, we, the town of Oakville, would look after that. Once you cross the property line, everything on the private property is the private responsibility of the property owner. So if you have a problem with your sanitary lateral on your property, it's the private property owner's responsibility, just like the roof is their responsibility. With respect to our town creeks, I mentioned that in 2008, there's a town-wide flood study done. During that 2008 flood study, there were public meetings to inform members of the public what we are up to in terms of looking at the flood-prone areas along our creek systems. And then there were also mail-outs to the people who were in the areas of concern. The areas of concern in this diagram are identified by all the boxes along the creek systems. And I'm just highlighting on the figure now that our storm sewer master plan core study area is outlined in blue. It covers most of the older areas of town, and by coincidence, but more or less by design, the flood-prone areas tend to be located in the older areas of town. Carrying on now with a little bit of Stormwater Management 101. I've already talked a bit about the minor system on your typical street. So your typical street, again, has catch basin inlets, takes the flow to the storm sewer. Your typical storm sewer on a typical residential street is designed for a 5-year design event. So you wouldn't expect to see an overly large amount of flow on the roadway for up to a 5-year event. And in the older areas of town, the storm sewer would outlet to the creek systems. In the newer areas of town, those storm sewers would outlet to a stormwater management pond. And we also have our typical roadway. And our roadway is what we call the major system, because when the big storms hit, it's the roadways that take the major amount of flow and route it. However, in the older areas of town, there's really no formal design of the major system. It wasn't common engineering practice in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, even the 70s to design a formal major system. But in our newer areas, say roughly from somewhere in mid-1980s onward, it became commonplace in Oakville and throughout Ontario to actually design the major system for the 100-year event. So now in the spirit of the new school year that just got underway, here's a crash course on the evolution of stormwater management. So I'm going to start the story in around 1954. That's when Hurricane Hazel rolled through this part of Ontario. And really up to that point in time, there were minimal standards out there. So it was quite common that there's some neighborhoods out in southern Ontario where there's really no ditches and there's no designed major system. Everything was just developed following the lay of the land. You have other areas that were older areas of town that were developed with ditches, but again, there's no designed major system. And then you have some slightly newer areas, say the 40s, 50s, and 60s, where there's actually a minor system or a pipe system in the neighborhood, but there's no designed major system. Then you have our creek system. So when development first started out, people tended to settle beside the creeks. They were a source of transportation, they were a source of food, they were a source of water. There's really no regulation at the start of time. I went back and did some digging with Conservation Halton. In their early days, when they started to regulate the creeks, there was a period of time where they just regulated the creeks to a 50-year design event. So you went from a period of no regulation around the creeks to just regulating the creeks to a 50-year design event. And now we look at creeks where if there's any development proposed, it's typically Hurricane Hazel as the design event that we use around the creeks. Then in 1981, Municipal Engineers Association, in conjunction with Consulting Engineers Ontario, put out a guideline on lot grading. This was to address or to clean up lot grading practices throughout Ontario, and it outlined appropriate ways to grade lots to minimize drainage concerns. 1982, Oakville was on the cutting edge and came out with some storm drainage policies and criteria manual. One of the items in that manual was, please design both a minor system and a major system. Fast forward to 1994. In 1994, the Ministry of Environment put out their stormwater management guidelines. And up to 1994, like peak flow or flood control was practiced with new developments. But if there were any ponds designed out there, there typically were dry ponds, which means there was a hole in the ground, the rain would hit, the pond would fill up, and it would drain, it would be dry again. But from 1994 onward, Ministry of Environment said, you really got to treat the stormwater for water quality control, and you got to get the pollutants or reduce the pollutants in the stormwater. And so that's when wet ponds became the norm. So wet ponds always have a permanent pool of water, and they remove pollutants much more efficiently. So our current standard here in Oakville is we have a 5-year minor system design. Our major system and our streets are designed to convey the 100-year event. Our stormwater management ponds are designed for peak flow control, water quality control, as well as erosion control. They tend to hold back the water and just let it out very slowly so the downstream creeks can handle it. And all our new riverine systems are designed to convey the greater of either Hurricane Hazel, which is the regional event, or the 100-year event. And I say that, and you might say, well, isn't the regional event a really big event and much bigger than the 100-year event? True, but on some of the smaller creek systems, the 100-year event can actually produce a more extreme event or more extreme floodlines. And the current era we're in the world of water resources is giving consideration about climate change to all that we do, and we'll be looking at possible impacts of climate change through the Storm Water Master Plan. Bit of an overview of the changes to surface runoff as development proceeds. So in the typical pre-development scenario, you often have definitely more farmers' fields, sometimes more canopy cover. You have tilled fields, uneven surfaces, and the result is you don't get too much runoff off of undeveloped lands. As soon as you start developing lands, you get more hard surfaces like roads and roofs, and you get more compacted and more well-graded green spaces, and as a result, you get more surface runoff. This one's malfunctioning a bit. See if it comes up here. Here we go. So just by way of example, I have some examples here for both the Coronation Park subdivision, which is, say, typical area south of the QEW, and one of our newer subdivisions in the north. So you have so the figure on the screen on your left shows a house that's already been rebuilt. So this lot here used to look like this, and it's been rebuilt. So in its rebuilt stage, that lot is 47% impervious. So 47% of the surface is hard, whereas originally it was about probably in the neighborhood of 22%. But this neighbor wanted to keep up with the Joneses, and people have the right to build and expand their properties, and they did. So in this case, you go from 22% up to 67% impervious. And then which is similar actually to, in the north we have smaller lots. Development is tighter, that's not news. And our typical lot in the north is around 64% impervious. I've talked a little bit in my presentation about design storms. I'm just going to focus on really the left side of this slide. So typically in water resources we talk about the 2 through 100-year design events. And then there's Hurricane Hazel as well. So I've mentioned that our minor system is designed around the 5-year event. Our 5-year event in this part of Ontario is roughly 35 millimeters of rain in an hour. Our 100-year event in this area is about 60 millimeters of rain in 1 hour, and just shy of 100 millimeters of rain in 24 hours. We also use, in this area of southern Ontario, Hurricane Hazel as a design event. So that was actually 212 millimeters of rain in 12 hours. Hurricane Hazel is a very large event. By point of reference, though, there's been certain events in the media spotlight recently. So Toronto in 2013, there was 140 millimeters of rain in 3 hours. The Burlington event last year was 191 millimeters in 8. And the Peterborough event was 240 millimeters in 11 hours. You notice all these time periods here are under 24 hours. These were very large events which caused a fair amount of flooding. With respect to stormwater management in Oakville, just to orientate everybody, we've got the lake down at the bottom of the page and the 407 at the top of the page. So when stormwater management first started being practiced, dry ponds was the norm. Again, those are ponds that drain and they're always dry. So we got just under 10 or so of those in Oakville. Also common in that era, the early era of stormwater management, is putting flow control devices actually on the creek systems or berming in the valleys sometimes. So we have about 8 of those. Then come in 1994, the MOE manual came out and wet ponds became the norm. So the newer areas of Oakville have wet ponds for stormwater management. These wet ponds again provide water quality, peak flow control, and for the most part erosion control as well. And we have there's about 50 ponds currently south of Dundas. Then in the growing North Oakville area, there's about 50 stormwater management ponds proposed. And the stormwater management ponds north of Dundas, they're all currently sized for Hurricane Hazel. And there's still a lot of municipalities in and around this area that do not size their ponds for Hurricane Hazel. So I think we're one of the first to do so as well. I flashed up on screen again the limits. They're the core study area of our master plan. That's the older area of town where, again, there's no formal major system design. I'm going to touch on, with the help of some photographs, some typical conditions now in Oakville. So up on the screen now is an older area south of the QEW, but not necessarily a bad area. So in this particular, in the figure on the left, you have a ditch street. So there's not a storm sewer on the street. There's a ditch street, but the lot grading is quite nice. It directs the flow towards the right-of-way. Lot grading is good on both sides. The street has nice grade in it. So this area, I would imagine, would drain quite well during an extreme event. Similarly, this is on the Warminster, looking south. It may not have been designed, but the low point on the road ended up right over the creek. So if a big event hits, the water will be directed to the low point, and by chance it'll spill out into the creek system. There's other areas that we'll find through the Stormwater Master Plan where there's low points in the system, like this is one here on Kerr Street, I believe. But there's no creek here, so I would expect there'll be a fair amount of ponding in this area. There is an outlet to the storm sewer here. It'll drain slowly, but this could be an area of ponding. There's other areas where here we have a sunken driveway. You have basically minimal curb, so if there's a lot of flow coming this way or that way, there could be some concerns in this area, for example. Fast forward to current engineering practices. So, old subdivisions are kind of like old cars. They don't have all the bells and whistles. They don't have the stereo. They don't have the anti-lock brakes. They don't have the traction control. Well, newer subdivisions come with more bells and whistles. So here you have a overland flow route, which is going to convey flows out of a future park block and route the flows down. So this will be a publicly owned land, and the flow will be not too deep at all. It'll route the flow down towards the public right-of-way. Over here is another area. So right back here is a stormwater management pond in North Oakville. But again, the major system in the north has actually been designed to flow from both sides to a low point on the road. And you can see the curb has been cut down. The sidewalk has got some grading. So it's actually designed to, during the big events, to flow or direct water to the stormwater management pond. However, when we do the stormwater master plan and we look at the older areas in detail, we'll find situations where there'll be a house or a series of homes located at these low points. And so one of the focuses of the stormwater master plan will be to identify these areas and then to look at what can we do to help minimize drainage concerns in the area. I'll now turn the rest of the presentation over to Christina, and then we'll answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Now that the rest of council's much wiser with stormwater management, we're going to move on to the master plan component. So why do a master plan? It is the first of its kind in Oakville. We don't currently have a stormwater management master plan, but we do have a transportation master plan that you're all familiar with. And in a similar fashion, this will become a living document that we continue to improve on and update as we move forward. And it'll help us to identify and understand our vulnerabilities and risks. So some of the issues that Philip just touched on with low points and flow going from privately owned or publicly owned to private lands, that type of thing. And it'll help the associated level of risk with those issues, and those will vary across town and within our core study area. Then we'll move on to looking at developing some possible solutions and mitigations that will help remedy these flooding or drainage issues. It also is a good opportunity to increase public education and awareness on drainage and stormwater management. We'll be well positioned should funding become available to carry out any of these initiatives. And we're also propelled forward through the heightened need driven by recent events in our neighboring communities. So we've broken up the stormwater master plan into some phases, and really akin to the transportation master plan, which looks at travel and trip behavior to predict increases in travel demand and the pressures it puts on our transportation system. With the stormwater master plan, we look at our input as rainfall or stormwater rain events, and the response that it puts on both our minor and major systems. Phase 1 is basically the background information where we look at studies, look at our infrastructure, and identify sort of the condition that it's in. Phase 2 is when we get into more detailed analytical assessment through modeling and calculations, the nitty-gritty of identifying where the issues are. And then we put together the needs assessment and a plan to implement these measures. And then phase 3 is all about how we would fund these initiatives. So phase 1 is recently been completed. We did a background data review that included putting a zoom camera into the manholes in our core area and looking both up and down the pipes to see what kind of condition they were in. You might liken it to a pavement management score. This is like a pipe quality index measure. And then we use those, that data to sort of rank high needs, low needs, maintenance issues for our storm sewer network. It was a good news story. The results showed 85% of the pipes that were inspected within the focus area were in a state of good repair. Phase 2, which is really the analytical portion of the assessment we've just recently initiated, we'll be looking at creating a model of both the storm sewer, the minor sister, and the roads, which is the major system. So that model will take the pipes, the topography, the roads through our digital elevation models, all our GIS data, and we'll put together a layer that we can use to model how the system would respond to different rainfall events. It'll help identify vulnerabilities such as the low points in the road, where the public flow goes onto private lands. It also helps distinguish between the different types of drainage issues. So we use the word flooding, but really it'll help identify areas where we've got nuisance flooding or ponding versus water in your basement. So it'll help distinguish between the various levels of issues and help try and prioritize those. And then we would take those needs and come up with a implementation plan. And as Philip mentioned earlier, we would take into account the climate change factor by running some of these events that happened in our neighboring communities and see how Oakville's infrastructure would hold up. And just to give you an idea, so you can visualize what this would look like.
This video demonstrates the combined 1D, 2D capabilities of PC Swim.
First of all, this is in Oakville, so you don't need to worry about which ward it's in, but gives you an idea of what to expect from the modeling. This is a riverine or floodline model, but similarly it would show when the water falls within the subdivision, around the homes and the streets, where would the water wind up. We can then see, which buildings would be impacted, spills through the different areas as the water makes its way to the low points, to the creek systems, to the storm sewer, to the stormwater management ponds. And so where do we go from there? What will be the potential outcomes of the study? It'll come up with a series of recommendations with respect to the different components of the system. So for the minor or pipe system, likely there'd be some recommendations to relieve low spots. So implementing curb cuts in the grates that you can see here in the lower picture, or even improved inlets where you can get more water in, or if they block with debris, there's other ways for the flow to get in. That's to the minor system. With respect to the major system, you're looking at more of a regrading or larger job. So I think the costs would be much higher associated with improvements to the major system, possibly than the minor. We'd also have area-specific improvements, for example, implementing a storm sewer where there currently isn't one, as was preliminary recommended through the Maplehurst Drive study. And then we would also touch on funding requirements for the above recommendations, and then any associated policy or design changes or improvements that might help facilitate moving forward without exacerbating issues. So in the interim, what we're doing, a few things, providing more information to residents via the website. So for homeowners that have drainage issues, it gives them some ideas of what they can do to remedy the drainage issues. Also, we've started handing out an informative door hanger to the new subdivisions, and that just informs the new homeowners if they're thinking of carrying out any changes, if there's a permit required to undertake those changes. It draws attention to the fact that there are swales in the neighborhood that do serve a purpose, so if you're planning on undertaking grading changes, you have to be mindful of that so that you don't cause issues with your neighbors. There's a new, we're looking to initiate an active site plan improvement, which I'll get into on the next slide, and also increase public education and awareness. So to address ongoing intensification issues south of QEW, so you saw our focus area is on the older areas, and we are aware there's currently lots of areas across town that have existing drainage concerns, both nuisance and more serious flooding issues. This is not an exhaustive list of West Street, Maplehurst, Coronation Park, Elton Park. There are many, and many more than I'm mentioning. But the idea is in those areas to initiate a new engineering site plan process that is essentially similar to a site alteration process with a higher level of technical support studies that are required. Areas of focus for these studies would include stormwater, forestry, or other environmental areas of concern. In the context of the master plan, it's really to look at mitigating existing local drainage issues. And I should say, based on our number of building permits within the past, we expect about 100 applications a year that would fall into that category. So where do we go from here? We'll continue on with our phase 2 modeling work, hoping to get out to the public the end of this year, and then again with the second PIC probably late spring of next year. The expected completion for the master plan study is, I guess, towards the fall of 2016, looking to implement the new engineering site plan process that I just talked about early of 2016. And then once we complete the phase 2 work, because we think it's important to understand our vulnerabilities and put together an implementation plan, then we would move into phase 3, which is the funding strategy. And we're looking to initiate that at the end of next year. And that could take about 24 months to complete. So that concludes our presentation. We'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
And you might have one or two. Councillor Duddick.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I am very glad that the committee members on CSC asked that this be shown. Very, very informative. And as you can suspect, Councillor DeMoff and I, in our area, have experienced considerable flooding or nuisance, as you have pointed out. Now, at the beginning of the presentation, there was a very pointed delineation between private and public and who carries what. What I didn't see is, and you did point or sort of land on it, with swales. We have had more problems with rear properties having swales filled in. And given that it's private nature, is there an expectation that we, the municipality, are going to try to address that? Or can we provide something through the public realm to help capture some of that water that's sitting at the back of people's rear properties right now?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So just trying to get all of that question in. So we do recognize that historically, over time, there's modifications and even just a ground settling and that type of thing, and we lose the swales. We do look at, through this new engineering site plan, when we have the, the tear down rebuilds or even the renovations, we look at the area stormwater management and the drainage issues. So we look at that for opportunities if it's sort of draining an area through that one property, putting in a rear lot catch basin, bringing it out to either the ditch or the storm sewer and that type of issue. I suspect through our modeling, not all of those issues will come out. It's probably going to tell us the bigger drainage issues, but I would think through the engineering site plan process, we can deal with some of those.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Elgar?
Thanks very much for the presentation. The second time was as good as the first time. Regarding cross connects, do we have any areas left that are that we know we have any cross connects? And have we done all the studies to make sure there aren't any cross connects between the sanitary and the storm?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do know that we have some areas, and we can tell through some of our stormwater monitoring that we've done over the past that there are definitely cross connections out there where we get the floatables into the dry ponds, that type of thing. The Region of Halton does have a program where they look at that. I'm going to look to either Philip or Donnell to help me out with.
I'll take a stab at it. So cross connections, they are out there. They're out there in Oakville. They're out there in every municipality. Do we think we have a lot of them in Oakville? The answer is no. Do we have some? The answer is likely. But from my travels as a consultant and with other municipalities, in a certain area, you need a lot of cross connections in order to actually accurately track it down. So if you see material coming out the end of a pipe at the waterfront or in a pond, you can start tracing it back, but unless we've had in my travels in certain towns, entire sides of one street cross-connected incorrectly. That's big enough you can track that down because it leaves a heavy enough trail that you can find it. But if you just have the odd cross-connection, it's almost impossible to find it unless you find it like when you're rebuilding the street.
Okay, so we don't have a big problem right now at all in that area that you're aware of. I noticed when one of the slides where you're showing the creeks, it looked like the worst, the most red blocks, which kind of like a red flag, was 14, McCraney, and Wedgwood on the south part of Oakville. Would I be correct in that?
Well, let's have a look.
While you're going there, stop for a minute. You want to roll back to changes in surface runoff? I want to thank you for changing and coming in with 3 slides after this slide from last week.
Yeah.
Where it was a 1950 house you were showing, so you've stepped it up and you've actually shown now just how much of the property is impervious. So thank you for adding those 3 slides.
This credit goes to Councillor Elgar for that one.
I thank you.
To carry on the rewind.
That's it. That's the one.
Yes. So here we have Sheldon, Bronte, 14 Mile and McCraney. So that's the 14 Mile and McCraney Creek systems here.
Right.
And then we continue eastward. So there are a fair amount of areas of concern here. This flood study or follow-up flood study, so again, there was the 2008 flood study that looked at the city as a whole, and then we're doing follow-up flood studies. So the follow-up flood study on 14 Mile Creek and McCraney Creek, we're 95% of the way there. We're done. We're just wrapping it up in terms of trying to dot some I's and cross some T's with the Ministry of Natural Resources because 14 Mile Creek has red site dace in it. So there are areas of concern along there, and that was the area we looked at first in a detailed follow-up flood study. Is there any other questions on that?
So that will be finalized pretty soon, just to highlight how bad it is?
Yes.
And what we have to do?
Yeah, so when the study is finalized, it'll actually go out for public review.
Okay, very good. Now on the east side, that's Wedgwood, I take it?
Lower Morrison.
So Lower Morrison
No,
here.
I'm going over to the red blocks.
Yeah.
Right there, yes.
That's Wedgwood, yeah.
So that's because the channelization that it's so bad?
The main thing here, because I was speed reading the 2008 flood study, there's a lot of smaller culverts here and bridges under public rights-of-way, and if they get supersized, the amount of flooding in this area decreases. So we are about to look at this area in detail. We have the terms of reference drawn up, and we're just dotting some I's and crossing some T's in it as well, and it's going out for bid this fall.
Okay. Can you highlight where it was we had to buy the houses because of the flooding and take the houses out? Where that would be on the map?
Myself, I cannot. Does Mr. Lambert know that one? It's a tag team effort, or Mr. Green?
Through Mayor Burton, that was on the Munns Creek beside the Oakville Golf Course.
Yeah.
It was an old 1950s steel arch pipe that was, I think, 10 feet wide, about 8 feet high, which had deteriorated over the years. And we purchased, we had difficulties with the pipe as well as the inlet structures, the structural capacity. That pipe had to be replaced, but rather than actually replace it with pipe, we realigned the creek and we purchased 3 houses, whereas initially about 20 or 30 houses were actually affected. So it was a major improvement, which actually made everything open land, open flow.
Now, are there any other areas south of the QEW you expect that we will have to do that going forward? I'm just thinking of the cost, like the numbers. There's no numbers in this presentation, and I can appreciate why. It's going to be huge, but I was just wondering, is there any chance that we're going to have to do this again somewhere?
So is there a chance? Yes. Can't unequivocally say no, there's no chance. But we'll have to take this, study 1 page at a time or 1 month at a time, and we'll give you an update near the end.
Okay, thank you very much, and I appreciate the presentation.
Alrighty, we have 3 more. Councillor Lapworth, Councillor Lischena, and Councillor Adams. In that order. That makes you next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for the presentation. Not too sure if anybody saw it, but last night at 9 p.m., I believe Cogeco aired a documentary on the Burlington flood 1 year later, and it was quite horrific to see the damage that was caused and the amount of water that actually came down through the city of Burlington. But my question is related to floodplains. I purchased a property recently on Burloak Drive and learned through town staff that my property is right on the edge of a floodplain. Now my question is, as and when this whole project is complete, would that floodplain exposure be eliminated?
You're going to need a bigger boat.
So the simple answer, will this stormwater master plan correct floodplain limits or reduce floodplain limits? The answer is no. So the stormwater master plan is focused on our town's major and minor systems, which is our drainage systems on and under the roadways. The riverine-based flooding is regulated by Conservation Halton, and we're looking at that through the town-wide flood study and then the follow-up flood studies. But looking at floodplain issues on a creek system is not part of the master plan.
Okay, thank you very much. So what you're telling me is I should keep my sump pump plugged in.
Perhaps have a backup generator
Thank you.
as well.
In lots of Oakville, it's a good idea to keep your sump pump in good order. Councillor Lischena.
Thank you very much. I did appreciate this presentation as well. The 100-year event sounds like a doom and gloom. So this may be a crystal ball question, but currently the town of Oakville, how vulnerable are we to a 100-year event should one happen in the next month? Is there a percentage of Oakville that is really in trouble?
So the areas at higher risk would be roughly 1/3 of Oakville, say the area south of the QEW.
1/3, wow. Thank you.
So the work is urgent. Actually, I'm very proud of staff's proactive activity on this. The Burlington and Toronto floods really are wake-up calls. Councillor Adams.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to reiterate what I said at the committee, which was, first of all, thank you very much to all of the individuals who are involved in the study. I think it's really important. Given the floods that we've seen in adjacent communities, this is the kind of thing that I think we really need to do to make sure that we're on top of it and prepared in the event of some kind of storm event. And that's why I asked for us to see it again, so that not only the other council members could see it, but the community could see that we're being proactive on this initiative. It's really an important issue. There was some discussion about the financing expectations that might be required. Could you reiterate your ballpark estimates around what kind of capital would be required to go through the financing of all the projects that might come out of the recommendations?
Yes, thank you. So I will reiterate, but rephrase as well. So committee, we took a ballpark stab, and then I've given it some more thought. I looked back, for example, on Burlington's recent initiatives. So Burlington had a $30 million capital project for stormwater management. They upped it by roughly $20 million over 10 years. So I think at the end of the stormwater master plan, and at the end of finishing our riverine creek systems detailed flood studies, you're probably in just the tens of millions of dollars.
Thank you very much. And that's, I want people to understand that it is an expensive initiative. It's not a few $1,000s. It is in the millions. There's also some discussion around stormwater charges, and there is a detail within the report that talks about Mississauga already going through a stormwater management program or a fee program, and Kitchener also doing the same. So there are already cases of municipalities using charges specific to stormwater and charging residents directly for it. Are there other municipalities out there that are contemplating it but aren't yet actually initiating the charge?
There are. We had a magic list somewhere. We won't toss it up. Oh, no, that was master plans. I think Stratford, I know Stratford looked at implementing a utility. I just can't recall offhand whether they did implement a utility. I think Peterborough's another one too. So there are others out there, and there's other municipalities like us that are just initiating the master plan process, and they're going to get into the reviewing funding opportunities. Some of those municipalities will end up adopting a stormwater rate or utility, and some of them will not. They'll just carry it on as a portion of the tax bill or with development charges, what have you.
Thank you very much. And at the committee, we discussed about the timing of that kind of thing. And in any case, this would be sometime post 2018, given the timing of the phase 3 element of this work.
Correct.
Right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, and keep on going.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank Darnell and his team, as everybody else has already done, for bringing forward such a comprehensive and detailed and excellent report, and also acknowledge that at the Community Services Committee, where many of us asked our questions already, I asked for a modification made to part of the report, and that has taken place, and thank you people for taking that into consideration.
Sure. Thank you.
Before I go to Councillor Giddings, the town manager has a word.
Well, Mayor Brennan, I just wanted to go back to the question from Councillor Elgar about are there any other Munns Creeks that are out there? That situation was actually very unique, and I do want to speak to that one because we had about 1,000 feet of a creek that was piped. I don't believe there's anywhere else in Oakville where we have a structure that was that long. So I don't believe the Munns Creek that I'm aware of will pop up anywhere else in Oakville. Can't guarantee it, but I'm fairly confident of that. The other issue I wanted to mention in the older areas of Oakville, for example, in the southeast, when you look at the lower Morrison and the lower Wedgwood, a lot of that was protected back in the 50s when the Wedgwood-Morrison Creek diversion channel was built just south of the building here. Because if that diversion channel wasn't in place, I can't even imagine how that area would even be today down there. So most of the flooding and that work, I was actually involved when the original floodplain mapping was done back in the 90s of the lower Morrison Wedgwood, and we did identify properties that were in the floodplain. We didn't put them in the floodplain, they were actually built in a floodplain. But the floodplain that they existed in was great, again, lessened by the Morrison Wedgwood facility. In that study, we looked at opportunities to take some of the properties out of the floodplain, but as my learned colleague over here said everything's connected to everything. And that was true because when we looked at releasing one area out of a floodplain, we just put another area more into the floodplain. So we looked at opportunities, and status quo was really, to a large extent, what we needed to maintain, and what there were recommendations how people can flood-proof their properties. So in many instances, when you get down into some of those areas, it's things that people can do on their private property that would help flood-proof their properties. So, you know, a lot has been done over the last 20, 30 years, especially in the early days of conservation Halton, because besides regulatory work, they used to do a lot of flood control, which was funded by the province. So a lot of that is in place in Oakville. We're really now, I think, beginning to fine-tune and tweak what's out there.
Okay, first-time questioner, Councillor Giddings, and then Councillor Elgar again.
Thank you. In terms of the dry ponds and wet ponds, is there any regulations or any desire on our part to convert the dry ponds to wet stormwater management ponds in order to have cleaner water coming out of them?
So currently we don't have any formal program to do that, but it's a possibility that some of them may be able to be converted, but we haven't identified which ones could be converted as of yet. But I think, was that part of our master plan? Yeah, I think our master plan allowed for that, to identify
So
which
that
ones
will
could
be included?
done. Yep.
All right,
screening level.
And the second question I have is regarding the tens of millions of dollars that are coming our way. What about areas south of the QEW and some areas north where our storm sewers are at the front of our houses? They're ditches, and we have a number of problems, whether it be concerns over West Nile or drainage, that over the decades, it just doesn't quite work anymore. I believe we've had a number of residents come to council in Ward 2 over the past couple of years. Your tens of millions doesn't include any remedial work on our exposed storm sewers, I take it?
Well, not yet, because we don't have the budget drawn up, but so there could be some areas where the existing systems don't work at all from a flooding perspective. So usually in a stormwater master plan, you're looking mainly at the high profile flooding sites where you have water in your house, or you can't get to your house because it's flooding. Nuisance flooding is a separate issue. It warrants some attention as well, and then we as a municipality and you as a council can help prioritize how we implement remedial works, whether it be for nuisance flooding or, you know, I've got water in my basement style flooding.
All right, thank you.
Councillor Hutchins.
Thank you very much. I'm also very impressed with all your team's work. It's really sobering to know what can happen, and with 100-year floods, and most of our what we call minor things are only designed for 5-year floods, 5-year problems. As I said at the CSC committee, I know a little bit about the Chicago area because of my business, and they've had 3 100-year storms in the last 30 years. So these events are going to be happening more and more frequently with global warming, which begs me to ask swales how important they are. I have a number of constituents who have issues with swales, particularly at the back of their properties and where the water isn't flowing in some respects because it's being backed up because someone's put a small pipe and the water's backing up because of that. Is there any way we can try and alleviate things like that by picking areas such as this low area to go and particularly talk to the people who live there and to tell them how important it is to keep these swales open and not to pave them over and not to cover them up and not to put small pipes in and so on?
So is there anything we can do to alleviate? So the answer is yes. So one step already taken, recall in the presentation. So often when people put their pools in and do landscaping, not often, but associated with pool installations and landscaping work, sometimes the drainage on a lot can get disturbed, and then others can be negatively impacted. That's why in 2012, if you come here and take out a site alteration permit, you're now required to hire a qualified professional, which could be a landscape architect or an engineer, to certify that the lot grading on your property has been done as per the plan and doesn't negatively impact your neighbors. So that change that we made in 2012 has helped to reduce problems in the field with the new installs. Let's say somebody does alter their backyard next week. Under our site alteration bylaw, you're really not allowed to alter the drainage on your property. So myself, Mr. Lambert, Eric Leighton, we spend a fair amount of time in people's backyards explaining how they messed up the drainage and that they need to take the necessary steps to remedy it. So that's all well and good if people report the concern within a reasonable time frame after it happens. We can get out there and respond. Sometimes you'll get a call, well, Joe modified his lot in the 1960s and I'm now concerned about it. That's a little harder to enforce, something like that, because the site alteration bylaw wasn't around back in those days.
Okay, so we can go and talk to constituents who have a problem and explain to them, and we can ask the neighbors to please rectify it. But is there any way we can actually force the neighbors to do it? If they don't do it, what is the penalties or no penalties? What happens?
That's a tricky area. So can you force or apply some leverage to a resident? Yes, so if they go in and fill the swale, and typically as a municipality, our goal is to work with members of the public, not to lay charges. So usually we knock on the door first, say, hey, it's been brought to our attention that you filled in the swale. It's there for a particular reason. We're going to ask that you unfill the swale and restore the drainage. Should they choose not to play nice in the sandbox per se, through the site alteration bylaw, we can give them an order to comply to fix the issue within X days.
Okay, sorry, the site alteration bylaw, is this for new properties or this is going back properties 30, 40 years ago? You can get them to redig the swales, which they may not have even done it because of houses have changed hands and so on.
So in my experience, it's hard to go back in time. We don't have a time machine. The site alteration bylaw is very useful for things that happen within a reasonable time frame. I won't give you a legal interpretation of what reasonable time frame is, but site alteration bylaw is a very useful tool to fix things that have happened in the short term, for sure.
So basically, we have no way of making someone do it, even though it's common sense to allow the water to flow through a swale. If he doesn't want to do it, it's been there 20 years, tough luck.
So a lot of things are civil matters between neighbors. Okay,
so then the next door neighbor, they can enforce it through the courts if necessary.
Yes.
That's basically the bottom line.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Elger.
Yeah, just quickly, I think Nick actually covered it, but at a recent climate change meeting, Minister Glenn Murray pointed out that the 100-year storm has happened 3 times in the last 24 years. So the idea that it's only got a 1% chance of ever happening, which is what the 100-year storm means, is totally out of date now, and we have to really look at things differently. And I'm just pleased that that's what the town of Oakville staff are doing for the people, especially south of the QEW. Thank you.
So, Council, it looks like you did get good value out of the exhibition of the Stormwater Master Plan report. Are there any parts of community services that you want to separate? If there aren't, could we have a mover and seconder for the community services report? Councillor Grant and Councillor Adams, all in favor? Opposed, if any? The community services report is adopted. Now, on administrative services, we need to separate item 4, obviously. Is there any other item in the ASC report that anyone wishes to separate? Could I have a mover and seconder for the balance of ASC? Councillor Knoll and Councillor Lapworth, all in favor? Opposed, if any, and the balance of ASC, except for item 4, is adopted. Now, on item 4, we have any number of questions and several proposed changes. I might even call them fixes. I've got at least 2 here, and the staff have also, I think, given us 1 here. And we had a number of questions brought to our attention, I thought, by the Mr. Fenwick, that left me with some questions. Why don't I start at this end? I know we have something from Councillor O'Meara. Councillor O'Meara, would you like to lead off with your first change?
Certainly, thank you, Your Worship. So the change that I'd like to move, and seconded by Councillor Lescheny, is that under item number 4, that P1, that 1P and O of Schedule 20 be deleted and replaced with the following, and subsections thereafter be relettered accordingly. P, not deposit snow or ice in such a manner as to obstruct access to any fire hydrant. And O, not deposit snow or ice as to interfere with the safe passage of vehicles or pedestrians.
Beg your pardon. As I understand it, Councillor Lescheny is seconding. Now, does staff have any comment on this, or do any members of council have any questions on this? Councillor Demoff?
Sorry, not on this part of it.
All right. Does staff have any comments? Council, any questions? Shall I put the vote? All in favor? Councillor Adams?
Sorry, I just want to double check that I'm looking at the right page for the O and the P that's being referred to. So are you looking, because I thought I saw 2 different versions of something.
Help everybody out by pulling your mic over.
Sorry. I wonder, could Councillor O'Meara help me? I just want to make sure that I'm looking at the right page of the right Schedule 20.
I believe it was page 150 of the ASC report. It basically just gets...
Sorry, page 150. Okay, so I'm looking at page 179 of the council agenda, where O talks about pool enclosures. That's why I have a question as to which thing we're amending.
So maybe I should sharpen my question to staff. Would staff like to check that we're doing this in the right place? The clerk is pointing out that this is about pools. Or, I'm sorry, or did I hear you wrong? No, you did hear me wrong. So, okay.
So I see on page 144 of the ASC, O talks about snow. But I'm seeing something different in the council agenda, I think. In the actual bylaw that's being passed.
Yeah. Let's turn to the clerk for guidance on where the bylaw is.
If you turn to your Schedule 20 on page 179 of the council agenda rather than the ASC agenda, we did make some minor amendments to the bylaw when we placed the bylaw on the council agenda. So 179 of the agenda, page 79, but 179.
So updating, the ASC is out of date. The new one is in the council agenda.
So,
is that helpful?
It's helpful, and I know what he's trying to get to. I just want to make sure that we're all working off the same thing, and that when we pass something, we know what we're amending.
Okay, so let's all agree we're looking in the council agenda.
And do all of the other elements match from the recommendation of the committee? That's my other concern. I just want to make sure that in the amendments that staff have made that we're not tripping.
Do you need another minute to comfort yourself that we're in the right place, or are you?
I'm comforted.
Are you satisfied?
I'm satisfied on this particular element.
Thank you. Councillor Lescheny, were you looking for the floor? Councillor Knoll, you're looking for the floor.
I am. I just wondered if it might be useful to have Mr. Barry just summarize where we are, because there were substantial changes that committee recommended at ASC, and perhaps if he gave us a guided tour of the document, a brief one, so that we know exactly what we're working with. Because I'll pose my question before you do that. Does the schedule in the council agenda incorporate all the recommendations from ASC?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it does not. It includes the revisions that staff caught before the last ASC meeting. So that handout that was provided before the ASC meeting.
All right, so to respect procedure, I'm going to ask one more time if anybody sees anything wrong with Councillor O'Meara and Councillor Liszczena's motion, and if no one sees anything wrong, I'm going to call the vote on that so that we can dispatch at least one thing. All right? Councillor Knoll?
I just wanted to be, so where would we find the changes that were made by Administrative Services? Simply in the context of the minutes of ASC?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the changes were in the handout that was provided at ASC, and I don't believe that's...
I don't mean those changes, sir. I mean the changes that we proposed at ASC.
Yes.
We made several changes. Where would we find those?
In the minutes from
Just in the minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so let's just, do you see something wrong with this motion?
Only in as much as I think it should be reading P and Q, not O and P, because it's to be consistent with what's in our council agenda, and we're at a council meeting, not a committee meeting.
Yes.
I think this should read that 1 O and Q of Schedule 20 be deleted and replaced with.
All right.
Because
Councillor
I think
O'Meara,
he's speaking to the plant material element.
Councillor O'Meara, would you like to speak to that?
Sure. All I really wanted to do was take the municipal right-of-way language out of those bylaws. So that was the intent, so that the snow removal can continue to happen on people's lawns. So it does look like Councillor Adams is right in terms of the numbers are not on here, are not the same as the numbers, the lettering that I had on my ASC agenda. So. So I would be okay with changing those, the letters in the amendment.
So can we just, everybody note down what we're changing? One thing at a time, please. I just want to hear the proper letters. Would someone say them? P and Q, did you say?
P, no. O and, yes, sorry, P and Q. It should read that 1 P and Q of Schedule 20 be deleted.
Thank you. So now I have questions from Councillor Demoff and then Councillor Elgar.
And sorry, can I get back on your list then?
All right, so are you on, I'm trying to keep everybody on the motion that's on the floor.
I'm on the motion on the floor.
All right, you're
That's
recognized.
correct. I have a question of our staff with respect to the plant material issue. We have a process by which individuals can adopt our boulevards right now. A homeowner, for example, can be given allowance to plant stuff other than grass on the boulevard?
That's correct. There is a process within the procedures of engineering and construction that can be applied for.
And are staff okay with overriding that, or does that process take place here even if it's outside of the licensing bylaw process?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the attempt in this bylaw was to synchronize this with the use of roads bylaw. So changing this bylaw will require a licensee to follow the instructions in this bylaw, but the use of roads bylaw would still provide a process to deal with plantings on the boulevard.
So by striking that by striking Q, which is the part that says that that you're not allowed to plant any garden material within a municipal right-of-way. So if we strike that, it would allow them to do so, but only subject to our right-of-way bylaw and our process by which a homeowner could adopt a boulevard.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, absolutely. The use of roads or the municipal right-of-way bylaw would actually still be in place and still have that process in it.
Great, thank you very much.
Councillor Liszczena, are you speaking to the motion?
I believe it was supposed to be only P. P states not throw pile, store, or cause snow or ice to be thrown, piled, or placed across on municipal right-of-way. And that was difficult for a lot of people to understand, including me. And so Councillor O'Meara had indicated the wording to be changed to these 2 points under P, not O, and not Q.
So if I've heard the clerk correctly, and Mr. O'Meara, Councillor O'Meara, it's P and Q rather than O?
Just P.
No Q. So.
Oh, that sounds bad.
All right. You know, I start to wonder, Council, would we be better to tell staff what we want to make happen and refer the document back to them for the more work that it clearly needs, and then read it again?
That would be fine.
All right, so do staff understand? Let me just do one thing at a time. So staff are clear on the right-of-way issue. Councillor Demoff, moving along this way, we'll come to you now.
This whole thing in terms of breaking down heavy equipment and landscaping equipment, I wouldn't mind looking at that as well.
Okay.
Which is all part of the same Schedule 20.
Okay. Is there in fact general support on council for that? Okay. Councillor Robinson, staff have heard you. Councillor Robinson?
Worship, I, and not being able to be at the ASC, I have some questions, or maybe just 2 on the driver training. Is this appropriate now to ask?
Yeah, it's your turn.
Mr. Barry?
It's your turn.
Jim, we've talked about this. This has been a heartache for several years, this issue that I've been involved with and with your predecessor, and as you and I know, we've worked with MPP Flynn's office and everything under the sun with not too much good happening. And when I saw what I think was approved at ASC the other night, I would just like double confirmation that the hatched pink area is now the only area in Oakville that's exempt from the driver training.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the crosshatched area is a prohibited area, so there will be no driver training allowed in that area.
In that hatched area there.
No.
And is there any way that we could arrange that this information or a picture of this or something to this effect be released through the media? Because there's many people in this particular part of Oakville will actually, in my opinion, be quite delighted to see this happen. And the second, I'll leave that one with you. And the last question is, does this change assist you in any way to better control those that were continuously breaking the bylaws?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it assists only in as much as it shrinks the enforcement area. The enforcement challenges remain. If the vehicles are moving, it's still difficult for bylaw enforcement officers to enforce because we don't have the ability to pull over vehicles. But in as much as the enforcement area shrinks from essentially the entire town to just that prohibited area, it does assist.
Well, I think, thank you. I think it may help. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Councillor Demoff, another change?
No, a question, actually.
Okay.
The gentleman who came said that in terms of the 7 years for the vehicle, that we had it in, we took it out, and we're putting it back in, and that's not what it says in the, has it been taken out, or has it always been 7 years, and you've just added the 300,000 kilometers?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it hasn't been taken out. In the report that came to council last September, an update report, it was indicated in that report that we were looking at removing it, but nothing, we were just directed to go back and have public consultation after that report, so it wasn't removed. What the consultation revealed through the process was the driving school industry actually said to us, don't remove the 7 years, and as a matter of fact, add the 300,000 kilometers for driver safety. So this was, the 300,000 kilometers was added in at the request of the driving school community.
righty. We still have a motion duly made and seconded on the floor by Councillor O'Meara and Councillor Lischina. So out of respect for process, and on the understanding that the mover and seconder intend and mean to have it read P and O, I'm going to, which is, no? What do you want it to say? P. Just P. There's an opportunity for a comic there somewhere. Oh, all right. But what about this? So if you look at the resolution, I accept that the first reference to O is in error and should be removed. I'm understanding that from both of you, right? And then you have P and O underneath. Do you also want to remove the O underneath? And the words after O are meant to be part of a continuation of P? On that understanding, may I put the vote? Councillor DeMoff?
I thought we were referring this back to staff. I didn't think we were voting on this.
Someone needs to properly move a motion to refer it back or defeat it and then refer the whole thing back. But a motion to refer would be in order, I think. And I think the first hand I saw was Councillor Dudek.
I would definitely like to refer this back to staff.
All right. So I saw a bunch of hands over here, seconded by Councillor Elger. Now, before we refer just this item back, we have some other changes as well? No? Then I'm going to go down the table here to Councillor Knoll.
Thanks. I just want to, first of all, that's a great motion, and I got to pee. But I want to make sure that when we do get this document back, that we've tracked changes in it, because it's getting really confusing now. So red line, track changes, whatever methodology we use, and also to incorporate the changes in those track changes that were proposed at ASC. Because if we do that, then we can avoid a lot of extra discussion tonight pending the return of the great document.
Excellent.
Thank
Excellent. I'm sure that that's actually what Councillor Dudek said and was duly seconded.
That's actually what I heard.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a channeling thing.
That's very good. Any more hands down this way? Councillor Grant.
Just to dovetail with that, though, and I think echoing something that Councillor DeMoff was going for, if there are some suggestions made tonight separately from what was made at ASC, which I'd like to see included as well. In track changes, there was a mention of altering where people could learn to drive, and then also our P's and Q's issue with the whole snow clearing and gardening issue. That it would be good if we had a separate category for that when we track changes, just so we can look at that as well.
My mother always told me it was very hard to mind your P's and Q's in life. Any more hands down here? Councillor Adams.
So I think I've got 3 issues that I'm hoping that staff will report back on when it comes back. One is the issue of 1Q on Schedule 20, which is the planting on the boulevard issue. If staff could review that, I believe it could be deleted without harm given our other process that already exists. Staff have already got the issue of lawn care and snow care operators being lumped in with the others and whether that should be separated. I brought forward an amendment that I wanted to bring up, which was the issue of deleting from Schedule 13, Section 3B, which is the driving school operator instructor vehicle, and removing the 500-foot prohibition around schools and playgrounds and the subsections thereafter that need to be relettered accordingly. If staff could deal with that, I'd appreciate it. I'm not sure, Your Worship, I know we've got this motion to refer. I don't know if you want to give staff direction on that particular matter or not here, or if you just want to send it to committee and have it dealt with there as an option.
What I thought would be most helpful would be for members of council to offer direction, and if anybody objected, to show that objection, and otherwise we'd take it as the will of council.
Okay.
And staff can bring us back something we can read more carefully i.e. blacklined and so on.
Very good.
So that we can make sure that we're getting what we think we're getting.
I think there's consensus around that particular issue.
Sure.
If not, you can find out. And the other issue I wanted to bring up was that I know the committee unanimously moved that we delete Schedule 17, which is the flyer distribution companies from the bylaw. And I would like staff, and I recognize there are some issues with the Schedule 17 as it's written. It requires $2 million liability to be proven through certificate, and it deals with some stuff that I think may be a little bit, and it also deals with some things that I think may be difficult for anybody to adhere to, which is the mail slot and receptacles issue. And I wondered if staff could report back with options to deal with nuisance littering, whether it be within a license program or outside of licensing. I understand we've got a littering bylaw that could be applied where appropriate, but it may not deal with distribution of flyers, because flyers may not be considered litter by themselves. And the other is whether staff could report on the issue of distribution of graphic materials. As you all know, we recently had an issue of materials being distributed that most felt were inappropriately distributed. Could staff please report on that particular issue and what options might be available to us to regulate the way in which materials are distributed?
In the context of the licensing bylaw?
In or out?
All right. So you're going to license it?
I'm asking for a report to consider what options are available to us on those issues.
Okay.
Whether they, and I'm not arguing that they should be licensed or not.
I just wonder if that's not a more proper item for a request for report.
Well, I'm asking for it because we're dealing with the licensing bylaw, and currently we do have licensing provisions for flyer distribution, and so I think it appropriate that within the context of this discussion.
Staff have heard you, and nobody's objecting, so
thank you.
It'll happen. Hands over here. All right, so Councillor Hutchins, do you have a hand or not?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Okay. Very basically, the right-of-way issue, if I understand everything, that is going to be taken out of both the plant issue and the snow issue. Okay, then I'm fine.
So the motion is to refer to the entire thing and for staff to attend to the directions received.
You're coming to this side, aren't you?
I thought I'd gone down yet, but sorry. Councillor Elgar.
Thank you. A few questions, and it's related to the driving school, Schedule 13, and also to the fees. And I'm just wondering if Mr. Barry can explain the $500 fee, which is going up to another $479. Are you able to report back on how it's justified? And also to address, Mr. Khan actually mentioned a way we could do it. Part-time, full-time was based on number of kilometers driven. Is that a way we could control that, in fact?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, our fee structure isn't based on kilometers or how the licensee chooses to operate their business. Our licensing fee is based on some very specific cost drivers when we look at any kind of license category. So it's administration of the license, and that includes things like how much time does it actually take a clerk to process a license, to put it into our computer system, to create bylaws, those types of cost drivers for administration. And then enforcement. How much time does it actually take officers out on the road to enforce the bylaw? So driving school is a good example. We have to have officers go out on the road and actually sit and wait and drive around and monitor areas of the town to find violators or to make sure people are in compliance. And that all adds to the cost of a license category. So if we were to give licenses for somebody that says they're part-time, that would actually, in all likelihood, drive up the costs for enforcement, because we would then have to be out there to find out if that's the case. Otherwise, we wouldn't have the revenues in place. We'd find ourselves in a position at some point where we wouldn't have the revenues in place to cover the costs to actually enforce the category of the bylaw.
Okay, so that doesn't sound very workable from the town point of view. Next is the year of the car. And I heard Mr. Khan say it was 7 years at one time, was taken out. Was it really taken away out? I wasn't aware of that. I thought it was still in there. So can you clarify that, the 7-year issue?
Absolutely. Through you, Mr. Mayor. And again, this came about as part of a report last September, where we brought an update report to council suggesting some of the things we might look at as we go through the consultation phase. And removing that 7-year limit was one of the things we said we were going to look at, and that was from initial consultation. As we did our focused consultation with the driving school industry, they indicated to us that we shouldn't remove that, and we should add on the 300,000 kilometer maximum to vehicles for safety purposes. So that's why it's in the form it is now for council to review.
Who is the driving school industry?
We mailed out to all of the licensed driving schools, so Young Drivers, ABC, all of the driving schools that we have licensed, and it was published in the newspaper as well, the Oakville Beaver. And when the industry and their representatives came, that's who provided comment.
So Mr. Khan would have received a letter also?
Mr. Khan would have received a letter. If Mr. Khan is a driving school owner, he would have received a letter.
Now, I heard Mr. Khan say that there is no place in Ontario where this is done. Is that true? Like, I'm just trying to understand why, if there's nobody else in all of Ontario doing it, why we are doing it.
And I certainly can't say that no place in Ontario does it. I have done the research to every municipality in Ontario. I do know it is rare, so we are one of the few municipalities that do this. And over the years, we've developed a pretty extensive safety regime in a lot of our bylaws and decided to do things that are outside of the norm in a lot of places, and this may be one of them.
The certification on an annual basis, is there any, do other municipalities do that, or are we the only one in that side also?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there are other municipalities that do certification. And again, I know Mr. Khan indicated there should be some delineation between a 20,000 kilometer a year use as opposed to a 50. And again, I think the issue comes down to if a vehicle is being used, certifications are really only good, I believe, for 30 days around the time they get certified. So anything outside of that, parts break, brakes wear, those types of things. So I don't think the 20,000 K is the critical factor in that. I just think it's the time.
So there's nothing in here you see that would save money, or and also from a safety point of view. You're saying if we implement the part-time, your costs are going to go up to make sure people are part-time on the extra 400. From the 500 plus another 479, the costs will go higher going forward if we split it between part-time, full-time.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, not having run this through the system we have to identify a cost, I can't say for sure, but what I can say is it would require administration. And to prove somebody was only operating part-time, we'd have to have officers out there checking that, and that is a cost driver.
Thank you very much for the answers. Thank you.
Councillor Knoll. Also on driving instructors. So I don't understand why we are licensing cars and drivers when the province is licensing both of those. What is the justification? I can understand licensing a business because we license businesses across the board for the most part, but why would we take such a deep dive into this industry and license drivers and vehicles when the province already does that and has guidelines and in the case of vehicles requires annual certification, I believe?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, traditionally we've done this so we could provide that extra level of scrutiny. Some of the benefits right now, the province is allowing municipalities to enter into cooperative licensing agreements. So when applicants get licenses through the province, we can sync ours up with those licensees, and then we have a control for violators, because if we were to revoke a license, theoretically the province would too. So it's that scrutiny that we can put on drivers for things like the operating in zones that aren't permitted. Without these types of licenses, we don't have that ability, and we also it wouldn't necessarily affect the cost factor either, because if we just had one license, we'd have to determine the cost for everything we're doing now and put it into one category.
That explains the driver's licensing. What about the vehicle licensing, though? I mean...
Councillor?
Yes, sir.
Can I call your attention to the clock and suggest that if the point of deferring it was that it's not ready for council. This item could be a debate at a later time, and
Good idea.
If we don't defer it, we lose the benefit of deferring it.
So I'll just add in the work plan, would you be prepared to discuss why we license municipally the vehicles and the justification so that we understand that? That's a good suggestion. Thank you.
That sounds very reasonable. Any other hands? Then we're going to the town manager. Mr. Green.
Thank you, Mayor Burton. Within that same report, there is also a bylaw that we're seeking approval on, 2015-091, which is a bylaw to establish a screening officer. I would ask that council approve that tonight, because going into the parking POA, we require that position. So it is really the appointment of a separate and apart from the licensing bylaw.
Under our procedure, we can separate things, so I'll separate out that bylaw, and we'll vote on the deferral of the balance. Is everybody ready to vote? All in favor? Opposed, if any? The balance of the work is deferred. And that leaves us needing a mover and seconder for the bylaw. Councillor Elgar and Councillor Knoll. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed, if any? The bylaw is approved. Council, I'd like to move the confidential consent item downstream in the agenda to the other confidential item, because I understand we might have a desire to go into camera on that one. It's not turning into a consent item. And that brings us to the first discussion item on the agenda tonight, which is the Oakville Enterprises Corporation Quarterly Report and Authorization Request. And I would welcome to the podium Rob Lister, the President and CEO of Oakville Enterprises Corporation.
Thank you, Mayor Burton, members of council. Thank you for the opportunity for us to come here this evening and provide a presentation or an update on Oakville Enterprises Corporation. I have with me this evening a number of my colleagues. I have Jim Collins, who's Chief Financial Officer, Mike Brown, Chief Operating Officer of Oakville Hydro. I have Mary Caputi, a new face, who is an Interim Vice President of Corporate Affairs, who's filling in for Amanda Kennedy, who's on maternity leave. I have Simon Abbott, who is our Vice President of Human Resources and Business Services. And Vivek Radhakrishnan, who is our Board Assistant and Corporate Secretary, and Scott Moody, Chief Operating Officer of our Competitive Energy Services Group. That's everybody. Great. I'm going to have Mary come up in a minute to provide an update on some impacts on the Oakville Hydro residential customers going into 2016. But before I do that, I would like to summarize the results of the Oakville United Way campaign launch last Tuesday. The Oakville Hydro was able to reclaim its championship position on the bus pull. We first won this back in 2012 on the inaugural bus pull challenge. And on the photo on the left there, there's a picture of Oakville Hydro facing off against Oakville firefighters. And then on the right, of course, we have a great picture of council pulling as a team for a great cause. And so we just share that with you. And I'm going to now ask Mary to come forward and talk a little bit about electricity bill changes to residents in 2016. Mary?
Thank you, Rob. Good evening, Mayor Burton and town councillors. The energy sector continues to evolve. and there are upcoming changes in the electricity bills that will impact Oakville residents and businesses. The Government of Ontario is introducing measures to control electricity costs, which are effective January 1st, 2016. The first is the removal of the debt retirement charge to all residential customers. This is an item on the consumer's bill that has been there since 2002. This charge helped pay down the debt from the former Ontario Hydro. The second item is the expiry of the Ontario Clean Energy Benefit. This benefit was introduced in 2011 for both residential and small business consumers. The Ontario Clean Energy Benefit is a 10% credit on the total cost of consumers' electricity bills. The credit provided benefit to help customers manage the rising electricity prices. As the Ontario Clean Energy Benefit concludes, the Ministry of Energy is introducing a new program, directing help to those who need it most. The new program is called the Ontario Electricity Support Program. The program will commence in 2014. This program will provide assistance to eligible low-income consumers with a monthly on-bill credit to reduce their electricity bill. The credit will depend on the amount of people in the household and their combined household income. Credits can range from $30 to $50 per month and can start as early as January 2016. Later this fall, the Ontario Energy Board has a province-wide marketing campaign planned to introduce this initiative. Oakville Hydro will make all the necessary billing changes in order to produce these results. A transition to monthly billing. Currently, Oakville Hydro residential and small business consumers are billed every other month and receive 6 electricity bills in a year. Oakville Hydro's regulator, the Ontario Energy Board, has issued a provincial mandate to bill these customers on a monthly basis by the end of 2016. The anticipated benefits and advantages are quoted by Rosemary Leclerc, the Ontario Energy Board Chair and CEO, on April 15, 2015, in which she states, "We want the bill to be more effective in helping customers manage their costs. Putting a bill in their hands 12 times a year instead of 6 will foster a better understanding of energy habits and promote regular conservation behavior." Project plans are in place by Oakville Hydro for the transition to monthly billing by the fall of 2016. As illustrated on this pie chart, electricity bills consist of many different charges. The distribution service is a portion that Oakville Hydro charges for delivering reliable electricity to the homes in Oakville. This portion accounts for 19% of the bill. So currently, the distribution service is a combination of the monthly fixed rate and a usage rate, which increases and decreases with the amount consumed. A new policy has been released by the Ontario Energy Board to shift to one monthly fixed charge for the cost of distribution service for residential consumers. And this change will be implemented gradually over a 4-year period. The anticipated benefits of this one fixed monthly charge will be providing local distributors, such as Oakville Hydro, a fairer way to recover their cost of providing distribution service. It provides a greater revenue stability and will help with its investment planning. Oakville Hydro will have no impact. There will be no impact to Oakville Hydro, and we will collect the same amount of revenues. Conservation and demand management continue to be very important. There is a new directive from the Ministry of Energy, which is called the Conservation First Framework. This is a 6-year plan which requires Oakville Hydro to make conservation programs available to all customers in Oakville. Oakville Hydro has an energy target of 92 gigawatt hours and will have funding of $24.6 million from the province. In May 2015, Oakville Hydro, jointly with Toronto Hydro, submitted and obtained approval for a 6-year conservation and demand management plan. Toronto Hydro will jointly deliver this framework over the time period. Working jointly aligns well with the provincial direction for local distributors to collaborate. Toronto Hydro has a proven track record of achievement to meet targets cost effectively. In addition, Oakville Hydro will be able to leverage their experience, Toronto Hydro's experience and resources. This summer, 3 town facilities, the Glen Abbey Community Centre, the 16-Mile Sports Complex, and the River Oaks Recreation Centre, have all been installed with rooftop solar panels. These 3 facilities combined total almost 1 megawatt of solar rooftop electricity capacity. They are backed by the feed-in tariff FIT 3.0 contracts by the Independent Electricity System Operator. Construction is complete, the meters are in place, and they are in the commissioning phase of the project. Lastly, Oakville Hydro continues to be involved in the community. Yesterday, a group of over 65 employees and their families participated in the Terry Fox Run at Coronation Park and raised over $77,500. On September 12th, Oakville Hydro was at the Oak Park Fall Fair, where it provided hydro bucket rides to the children. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Councillor Elgar.
Thank you very much. Can you get down a little more to the nitty-gritty? Are the hydro bills going up or down? Like, you know, I hear we're going to lose the 10% saving.
That's correct.
Okay, so what's in it for me?
The 10% credit was a temporary measure. It was a 5-year temporary measure. The removal of the debt retirement charge is a savings, so it should pretty much net with a small increase. So the removal of the debt charge was a charge, so that will be removed, and your 10% credit will also be removed.
What percent was my debt charge versus what I'm going to lose? Like, I'm just trying to figure out, like, at the end of the day, and are they
Okay, so
are
on
the
a
rates
month-
going up also? Are they going to? Are you?
Well,
going to
in November, electricity rates will be announced every 6 months. The province will, releases new rates based on the forecasted electricity pricing, which we don't control, but those are released every November and May. And I can't predict whether they'll go up or not. That has been the past. But overall, with these changes, the known changes, there is a negligible amount of increase.
Negligible. Got it.
Councillor, I wonder, given the clock,
Yeah,
if you
that's fine.
favor us with a motion to go past the hour.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure.
Seconded by Councillor Lapworth. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Councillor Lapworth and then Councillor Knoll.
Thank you for the information. So if you're going to bill us every month, that means you're going to process twice as many checks and process twice as much going through the post or through the emails. Are you going to absorb that cost?
Okay, so we've already, since it's been released, we have worked really hard to have customers going on e-billing, which will reduce postage costs. And there may be a mechanism through the Ontario Energy Board to be able to recover some of our incremental costs.
Councillor Knoll.
A quick question. The new the new program that's been initiated for low-income supports for hydro, does that replace the existing, was it winter warmth or LEAP? I can't remember which one is which. One is hydro, one is gas. Does it replace or does it augment?
So it will be complementing. So the LEAP program is considered emergency assistance, for which a customer can get a one-time payment annually. So that will still continue.
Okay, so this is just...
This is an ongoing.
And how does somebody actually qualify for it? Will they go through an application process?
That's correct. There is going to be, the province will be releasing it soon, but it will be an online central agency where they will make an application.
Thank you. Councillor Demoff.
Be very quick because it's not a question, actually. It's a thank you. When I look at the picture of the Terry Fox team, and since you're all here, I just wanted to thank you very much for your support. You were a phenomenal team there yesterday, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can I ask council if there's two of you who'd like to move and second the, well, Councillor Robinson hasn't moved anything yet, and Councillor Knoll seconds. All in favor? Opposed, if any? The report, the motion is adopted. Thank you, Councillor Knoll.
Not to be upstaged by Councillor Demoff, I also want to thank Hydro for coming to my event in Oak Park. It was fabulous, and the kids really had a great time. I've never seen such a long line.
This is the proof where it wasn't needed, probably, that Harry Barrett was right. Oakville's a city that calls itself a town. It's a city that calls itself a town and feels like a village, because the village feeling is going strong here tonight. Thank you very much, Oakville Enterprises. Now, Council, I pull your attention to discussion item number 2, support for the memorial monument for the 150th anniversary of the Lawrence Scots Regiment, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Giddings, and introduced according to protocol and procedure at the August 10th council meeting. It's now duly before you. Shall I call the vote? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Thank you very much for unanimous support, for your unanimous support of that. I now call your attention to item number 3, the Halton Catholic District School Board Disposition of Real Property in Oakville report and the recommendation. Councillor Adams.
Thank you very much to our staff for the report. I appreciate the consideration they've given it. Could I ask our staff about the public process that would be expected should no other board or any other party express interest in the property?
Should no other organization express interest in it, then we have discussed with the board at 2 different levels on working with them in order to put some additional planning and zoning restrictions on the property so that it would sell for, this is noted in the report, an uplift. I don't believe there would be a large public process involved with that, but I'm sure as part of the planning process there would be consultations with the neighborhood.
And as I understand it, municipality is not allowed to buy it for the sole purpose of gaining value in a subsequent sale. Is that correct?
No, we're prohibited from making any kind of profit on just about everything that we do.
It's so unfortunate, but as it is, I understand you've got both options 2 and 3 being put before us on page 31 of the agenda, and that's what you're hoping to proceed with in effect?
Just one moment, please.
We're not changing the zoning or the OP, but you want to go through the planning work with it.
Yes, so the option 2 is the option that we recommended, which is to work with the board to see if there's any uplift on the property that we can share in, and our first priority is not to purchase the property if we can do it this way.
Right, I only ask because you've got option 2 called recommended and option 3 called preferred, and an average resident might look at that and be confused.
That was my approach to saying sort of 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, do them both, right. you've got a map that's shown there, which is, I presume, a hypothetical situation, which could change. What public process, so assuming that we go through option 2 and 3, keeping the OP, keeping the zoning, what process would be used and what kind of notification would happen to the homeowners that are backing on to the site in particular would happen? I want to make sure that homeowners know, because right now, hardly anybody even knows the property is up for sale. And that's a concern to me that only after the fact will all these people find out, and only then will we all hear screams of anguish that the neighborhood's not going to happen the way they thought it was going to happen. How are they going to find out, and what are we going to do?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The plan that you see in your agenda is really just a concept. All it demonstrates is what the current surrounding zoning could accomplish on the site. But anything that happens to this site, it's currently zoned to community use, so it would need a rezoning to establish any kind of alternative use on it, such as residential in this particular case. So that's a full zoning process with all the consultation ahead of time, because the statutory meetings here at council, as well as then the full approval and recommendation process. So we could actually, I know when we had done, of course, the South Central studies, we had done a lot of conceptual work ahead of time in terms of getting some input in from the community about the particular area. So that could certainly be added to the process as we go along. But the expectation was that it would be a full public process.
Okay, in which case neighbors would be provided with a physical notification.
The notification for any rezoning application would be the 120 meters around,
Right.
but also the requirement for the sign to go on the property.
Very good, I appreciate that, and I need to correct myself, I think I misspoke, I think I said keep our current OP and zoning. It's not the zoning, it's only the OP that stays. The zoning, as you said, does need to change for it to allow for the residential if it happens that way. Okay, thank you very much, that's all I had for our staff, and if nobody else has any questions, I am willing to move the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor. I need a seconder. Councillor Lischina, any discussion? All in favor? Opposed, if any, and that is adopted. Council, that brings us to item number 4, the federal election 2015 council meeting schedule with the recommendation from the clerk's report.
I'd like to excuse myself for this vote.
I'm sorry?
I would like to excuse, I'm going to leave the room for this vote since I am running in the election.
All righty. I'll move the item. It's moved by Councillor Lapworth, seconded by Councillor Elgar.
Are we moving receipt? I need to know if
Well, I'm looking at item number 4, recommendation that the September 8th, 2015 report from the Clerk's Department be received.
right, but we do need to schedule the meeting, reschedule.
Oh. What an interesting little detail. All right, so Councillor Lapworth and Councillor Elgar, let's make this a little more useful. The motion should be that the council meeting scheduled to be held on October 19th, 2015 be rescheduled to take place on October 26th, 2015. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed, if any, and that is carried. Now, we have a lot of agenda left, and we have item number 5, and I'm going to excuse myself from that item. As I said earlier, for the reasons I said earlier, Acting Mayor Lischina is welcome back to the chair, and when you've done that item, I'd be glad to be called back. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So Council, you have item 5 before you. The recommendation in the report is looking for direction to staff. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to this matter? Councillor Knoll?
I'd like to actually ask staff about this issue around official versus non-official social media sites and whether or not this is something maybe we could define a little more succinctly going forward. And here comes communication staff to address that.
Through you, Madam Chair.
The official town sites are the ones that are maintained by town staff. So we've identified, there are several sites that are maintained by staff. The policy does speak to sites that are maintained by members of council. It also speaks to actions by staff on personal websites, because as you know, social media blurs the world. So the policy does identify that there isn't a black and white line between personal and town business. So the policy does anticipate that people will engage in on their personal sites, that they may engage in town business. And so that's why the guidelines do apply to people conducting town business or referring to town business on their personal sites as well.
During the debacle in question, there was a suggestion sent out by CAO Green, I believe it was, that mentioned that councillors should, and the mayor, indicate on the social media sites clearly that those sites are for personal opinions and don't necessarily bind or otherwise represent the interests of the town. That's a really good suggestion. I've done that. I think others have done it as well. Is there, part of the learnings from this entire experience, is it possible that we could find ways to make that policy a little more clear and maybe more helpful to in providing some guidelines and some direction?
Through you, Madam Chair, I think the way the guidelines do work, and certainly we do speak to council in all forums. Members of council need to identify that they're speaking on their own behalf, because only the mayor can speak on behalf of the town. So that's very consistent, whether you're speaking publicly or through social media. So we've tried to carry the same tone over. The guidelines that are there about posting really speak to the content of what you post. So I think the guidelines apply to staff, to members of council, and they're really just tips to say when you're posting to social media, it doesn't really matter where the social media is. You should take into account these guidelines, because there is no line, there is that blurred line between personal and private. So that's why the guidelines do try to anticipate, you may be on your own site, and it's certainly come into play with staff in many organizations. The media has covered incidents where people have had, severe impacts to their personal, to their professional life for things that they did, or have been covered on another individual's social media. That's the difficult part. You can't have black and white guidelines, because it may not even be on your own social media. Somebody may video or cover something you do and post it on their own, and it could still have the same impact on you. So I think the guidelines will always be guidelines, because you can't have black and white when it comes to these types of media.
Yeah, I understand that. I guess I must admit, I haven't read the guidelines word for word to dissect them, but that advice that Mr. Green gave us, does that appear anywhere in the guidelines?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, it does.
It does, eh? Yeah. Okay, and does it refer specifically to councillors should employ that kind of, I guess, protocol as well?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. It applies to both staff and members of council.
Well, you think of everything. That's great. Okay. Okay, I'm done with my questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak? Councillor Adams?
Can I just ask our staff about the cost element that was brought up earlier? So in the report, I think it refers to the 2011 inquiry that got sent to the integrity officer, which cost $11,160 plus HST. And we had 8 requests brought to us in February of this year, plus this one. If they were all of the same cost structure, that's $100,000 in a single year if they were all being sent directly without consideration. Do we have how do we deal with that kind of unexpected situation? I mean, I want to point out that's why we go through this process, but when we're faced with these kind of unexpected costs, where somebody brings forward complaint after complaint after complaint,
I think you've raised 2 points. The $11,000 is our approximation. That's all the evidence we can give you what it costs, because that's what we know, that first one cost that amount, and we would take that from contingency.
Has there been a review done of other locations, and what kind of process is used for this kind of issue to avoid bankrolling other people's complaints? Because I do worry that there's an issue here around separating real complaints from vexatious complaints.
I believe that we have put that potential for abuse of the system is covered in the policy by having it come to council to make a decision on whether they feel the matter warrants an outside party looking into it. So it wasn't really, when we developed that policy, it wasn't really anticipating that we would be wasting money on spurious complaints if they came forward. We were thinking about the issue of the merit of the complaint and giving that to council. The avoiding of the cost is another issue that fits into it, but that was not anticipated when we put that policy together. And as I said, if council chooses to move this forward, it's not a budgeted item, but we would pay for it out of contingency, and it would, not cause the organization to suffer unduly.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Councillor Grant?
Thank you. And dovetailing on that and my earlier concerns, there does seem to be this feeling that if it comes to council, it gets blockaded somehow. Do we know what other municipalities do when it comes to integrity complaints? I remember that I think it was George Resti back in 2011 had suggested other municipal uses or ways that people could go through a complaint that would not have that optics of council stopping them from doing anything.
I do not have that information at the top of my head. We can develop, or we can do a poll of the communities and find out what has happened. I believe that there's different attention given sort of across different municipalities. Some have had a lot of experience and some have had very little. And I think that it will vary depending on what their level of experience is, but we have not tracked that.
Would that be direction, or would it require a request for report?
I think it would be best to request a report. It would be a fair amount of work.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. Back to Councillor Knoll. We'll finish off this side and then go that way.
Well, I would defer my position to a first-time speaker and then come back if there's somebody else.
Okay. Is there anyone on this side who would like to speak?
That made it easy.
Go ahead, Councillor Knoll.
In context of the last question, Mr. Brennan made suggestions that there's been court rulings or rulings by the Information and Privacy Commissioner or somebody. I wasn't totally clear on what his suggestion was, that council should not be participating in this process. I do believe under the Act we're required to, but he made a suggestion that we shouldn't be, and that at some official within somebody's official office or capacity, they've stated otherwise. Do you know anything about that, and can anybody speak to that?
Certainly. We believe that our policies are in compliance with the legislation and will help provide guidance in these situations, and we do not know of any other agency that has prohibited or complained about the policies that we have in place. We think that they are appropriate and in compliance with the legislation.
So that we're totally rounding the circle here, can that be included in the work that Councillor Grant has suggested? Because a member of the public has made that comment, and for total clarity and to give power to whatever decisions made tonight and in the past, I think it's important that we clarify that.
Of course.
My second question, or I guess it'll be my third now, but my next question relates to the previous episode that we actually did employ an integrity commissioner to rule, and Councillor DeMoff had referred to that earlier this evening. I believe it was, yeah, that the integrity commissioner had actually ruled on a similar nature complaint. Does anybody have that information handy that they could refresh our memory. It was essentially the same complaint that was leveled by another individual in town. I think it was 2011. It was the one that precipitated an integrity report before. Is that, Councillor Demoff, can you help me here?
I think it was 2011, and it was sent to the integrity officer who came back with a report.
Yes, and we didn't come prepared to answer that question, but our recollection is that that did get referred to the Integrity Commissioner, and it was about the cancellation of a meeting, as I recall. It was.
So are you suggesting that there was not a reference to the social media? I recall that there was a lengthy conversation about social media. I'm seeing heads shaking. Okay.
Yeah, as we said, I mean, we didn't come prepared to answer that question, and we don't recall. We remember the meat of the issue, but I don't remember the nuance of it. The reason we keep quoting it is it's our only experience, and that's what we sort of assign the cost to.
And last question is, there was a suggestion as well made by Mr. Brennan that, I wish I wrote the quote down. He says, we pay for an integrity commissioner, we might as well use him. So there's been reference to the fact that it would cost $10,000 or $11,000. Can you speak to the fact that some municipalities have integrity commissioners on staff and others don't? Can you speak to that so that there's absolute clarity around that issue?
Yes, I can. We pay for service. We do not pay to have him available at our call. He has qualified as our integrity commissioner, so he's gone through some process where we have interviewed him and selected him and made sure that he has the appropriate credentials, and then we pay as issues come up. So we're not paying a flat fee out. We pay for each event.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Knoll. We will go back to the other side of the table, and Councillor O'Meara has a question.
I actually don't have a question. I'd like to move direction here. I mean, we're going to talk about this all night. I would imagine you need a motion.
Yes, I do.
So, I mean, I would move that we do not direct the town clerk to proceed with a formal inquiry on this issue. I'm moving that because I think going with the integrity commissioner is a part of a process to get to a conclusion. The mayor's already admitted and apologized for a conclusion, and I think in all seriousness, while I do understand the gravity of the situation, I think we have wasted a lot of time talking about this issue. There's a lot of work that needs to get done at this town, and I don't think that we're, spending tax dollars appropriately by trying to get to a conclusion that the mayor himself has already admitted that he made a mistake to get to. So I'm happy to put that forward motion.
So thank you. We have a motion on the floor. That's option one. Second option? No. We need a seconder. So that option one is the motion that you put forth. Do we have a seconder? And that's Councillor Knoll.
Can I speak to that?
Yes, I was just going to say, do any members wish to speak to this motion?
Yeah, I will. I'm thankful that I didn't have to make the motion this time, but I'm thankful to Councillor O'Meara for that motion. I think that, as I said in my comments to Councillor Brennan, that was really first telling the Anyway, I mentioned to Mr. Brennan that I didn't appreciate the comments, not as a partisan, but simply as member of council, a citizen of Oakville, a citizen of Canada. I didn't appreciate the comments, but I don't believe in my mind that they were meant with any degree of malice, and I think that I think he has apologized. I know some aren't satisfied with the apology. I think that I am satisfied with the apology at this point. I've had several chances to talk about the situation with Mayor Burton. And I will say this, that we can spend $10,000 or $11,000 or $12,000 to come up with a couple pieces of paper that are going to say something. And it may say, he shouldn't do this, but there's nothing you can do about it, kind of thing. That's my suspicion, is what it will say, because I believe that's what it said last time, that it's his personal social media. But is it good money spent? And is this really just dragging an issue on, as Councillor O'Meara mentioned, longer than it really needs to be? I think it is. I think that Mayor Burton has been tried and convicted in the court of public opinion on this thing. I think he's learned his lesson. I hope he has. Certainly haven't seen much more since that time. I do personally believe that he's quite remorseful for the situation because I know he hurt a number of people, and he's acknowledged that. I looked at our own commissioner that was sitting in the back of the room tonight, and thinking about what's going through Ernest's head as he's, when he heard this and then as he's gone through it. And, it was a bad moment for Oakville. It was a bad moment for Mayor Burton. But for the grace of God, go us. That, should we be, we've all made mistakes, Well, you've all made mistakes, I haven't. But we've all made mistakes at times. We said things that we didn't mean to say. We said things that we regret later on. And really, is that worth $11,000 a shot? I don't think it is. I think that the mayor has gone through enough with this. The town has gone through enough with this. It's time to move on. We have lots on our agenda, and I think we need to get to work on that. I mean, the next meeting is going to be chock-a-block with bylaws, the licensing bylaw, and all these other great things that we need to deal with at the town, and I think we've had enough conversation about this.
Thank you, Councillor Knoll. Councillor Elgar?
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. I will be supporting the motion. I know at the end of August, David Lee actually called to see where I stood on the issue, and I believe I said that the comments were unfortunate, and I strongly disagree with them, and I'm hopeful that the mayor will be more careful with his social media comments in the future. And I stand by that, and I do feel that he has apologized to the veterans, and I don't know whether people are aware, but he grew up in a military family himself for his whole childhood into his late teens, maybe early 20s, but he's not against the military in any way, and I think whatever happened that day, it happened. I think probably everybody can learn from that on how much they should put on Twitter at the spur of the moment, and I really don't want to see 11,000, 12,000, or whatever it is thrown away when we can do better things with the money at this point in time. So I will be supporting the motion before everyone tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Elgar. Councillor Grant?
Thank you. I think that our election 2015 has taught a lot of people about social media, but to not step on any other comments that people have made, I think at least some of the positive things that have come forward is that we probably will be relooking at our communications policy. And I think coming from this as well, just given the fact that, as Councillor Adams has pointed out, there have been some concerns brought forward from people for an integrity commissioner. I think it might be valuable to come back with a request for report to see if the process we're using is useful and makes people feel comfortable that if they have a complaint, it will go forward somehow. And I'll be working on that with staff and one of the council members later on. But I think that to keep dragging this on and on serves no one. And frankly, to spend, as I said before, $10,000 for what essentially is a slap on the wrist is not a good idea. I appreciate the fact that Mr. Brennan said that he'd like to crowdfund something. If he's going to crowdfund something, I'd kind of like us to crowdfund a nice Christmas for a family at the poverty line, but that's just me. So anyways, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. Councillor Giddings?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not able to support the motion. I have no doubt of the mayor's remorse and that his apologies were heartfelt. But given the broad coverage that has been generated over the matter and the overwhelming feedback from residents regarding the issue relating to social media guidelines, conduct as it relates to Oakville's image, as well as real or perceived conflicts, I believe that in the interest of transparency and to provide future clarity, that this matter should be decided upon by referring it to our integrity officer for his opinion as to whether the inquiry is appropriate as detailed in option 2 of the staff report.
Are there any other members of council who would like to speak? Councillor Hutchins?
I will be supporting the motion. Obviously, the mayor made a major mistake here. I personally don't think he intended to insult the veterans. It's one of these issues that I think he misspoke and has since very much regretted it, and I believe that his apology was heartfelt. I'm also conscious of the fact that the guidelines put out by the town, I don't know how much they impact with the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and freedom of speech, whether that has any issues. So that's another area I'd like the town to take a look at, because I think that's an important aspect. Just because one becomes a public figure doesn't necessarily mean that one has to give up all one's rights. But as I said, this was a very unfortunate incident. I'm very sorry that it happened, and I am sure the mayor, is equally contrite about the whole thing. But I will be supporting the motion.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Councillor Adams?
First of all, I agree with the comments made by many of my colleagues around the table here. I don't agree with the comments that were made by the mayor on Twitter. I do think that it was a substantial error on his part to write what he wrote, both the first time and the second time, if you will. I do agree with some of the comments made earlier about the mayor truly regretting what he wrote. I believe that sincerely he means to apologize, or did apologize. I also believe he's already been punished in the court of public opinion, as was said earlier. That truly is the biggest punishment that could be meted out. The other punishments that might be available, I don't think are as sizable as that in this particular case. I do worry about the process that we've got. Councillor Grant has already commented about reviewing our process, and I would support working with you on that discussion and how that should look, or what other people are doing out there in terms of how the process could work or should work. But in this particular case, I think there's better value in using $11,000 or $10,000 or whatever the number is in other ways. And as I said, I think it's gone on long enough on this particular case, and I think it's time to move on and deal with other more important things to the community. So I know there'll be people that are demanding more. I think the more has already happened, though, and so I know there are people that don't like the apology that was issued. I think it's sincere, and for what it's worth. So.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Councillor Robinson?
Madam Acting Mayor, yes, it's unfortunate that the Mayor of Oakville exercised such bad judgment, but he has convicted himself. He's convicted himself by virtue of his strong apology, and I think his time has been served, and we should move on.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Councillor Demov?
I'll be brief. I don't think any of us agree with what was put on Twitter, but putting the money, I would much rather see that money that we would spend for the Integrity Commissioner put towards the memorial monument that was brought to us tonight. So I will be supporting Councillor O'Meara's motion.
Thank you, Councillor Demov. And Councillor Dedek?
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. I will be supporting the motion. I was very interested in Mr. Brennan's delegation, that he did cite that humans make mistakes, and I think we all know that the best kind of mistakes are the ones that we learn from, and I think that's taken place here. So I will be supporting the motion.
Thank you. Back to Councillor. Oh. So no, I know, but who? I didn't see the hands. Does it matter? Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't see your hand go up first. So Councillor Lapworth.
Yeah. I'll be supporting the motion as well. And as I said in the press at the Oakville Beaver, we all make mistakes. Some make more than others. Some make greater mistakes than others. But the mayor has apologised, and I believe now it's time to move on with the business of the town. And if people really want to think about this in 2018, I guess the voting public of the town will decide. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lapworth. Back to Councillor Knoll.
Just very briefly, I forgot something I wanted to say when I had the floor last time. I won't take up a lot more time. I made the statement before, and I believe in this very strongly, that I think people need to be judged by more than their mistakes. And sometimes you have to look at the holistic situation, and you have to look at, you know, the culmination of somebody's career and what they've been able to achieve, and not simply judge them on the one thing. Yeah, this was a goofy, stupid thing to do, there's no question, but by and large, I think that he certainly has earned, and you know what, I used to be his biggest critic. This is coming from me, this is like I used to be Mayor Burton's #1 critic. And I got to tell you that over the years, I've learned to appreciate the work that he's done for this town, and I truly believe that he has the best interests of this town and the community in mind. And I really believe that to prosecute him further than he's already been on this is wrong. And again, I think that you have to judge, particularly leaders who are in tough, stressful situations. You have to judge leaders based on the culmination of their careers. So that's what I wanted to say before. I forgot to mention that. But I do have one last thing to say. Good job, Madam Acting Chair. This was a tough first time to ever do this. Out of the frying pan into the fire, as they say. Good work.
Thank you, Councillor Knoll. There being no further anyone else wishing to speak, I would like to call the vote. All in favor? All opposed? And it is carried. We will now recess the meeting to allow the Mayor to return to the meeting. Thank you very much.
Those supporting will be held accountable.
All right, Council, if you turn to the confidential discussion item and the confidential consent item C1, and having regard for the clock, do you need to go into camera on either of these items? And in the alternative, would you like to move a motion to go past 10:30 to 11, say? Councillor Giddings.
I'll pass the past. And I would like to go in camera briefly for the one item that I addressed earlier.
So Councillor Giddings moves that we waive the procedure bylaw to go past 10:30 to finish the meeting. And
I need a seconder.
and we need, as soon as I'm allowed, I'll go for a seconder. Is there a seconder? Councillor Adams is seconding it. All those in favor? Everyone's in favor. It carries. No? One's against? Still carries. Sorry about that, Ralph. Councillor Giddings moves going into camera for C1. Is that correct? And the grounds, do you have those handy? We have to say why.
Yes, I'd like to go into camera to discuss a confidential consent item regarding town property.
All right. So Councillor Giddings moves the motion that council resolve into a closed meeting session for the purpose of dealing with litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. The seconder is Councillor Adams. Now, this means we're not going into camera for C2. You're going to just receive the report as given. Is that correct? Everyone's understanding? All right. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? That carries. So now we need to arrange the chamber for a confidential session. And I'm told it'll be fast for you members of the media that may wish to join us when we resume. Council now returns to public session, having met in a session closed to the public for the purpose of dealing with litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose pursuant to the Municipal Act. And it would now be in order to have a mover and seconder for item C1. Councillor Duddick moves it. Councillor Demoff seconds it. All those in favor? Thank you, and that report is received. C2, I take it we have a mover and seconder for that report. Councillor Adams and Councillor Hutchins, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. There are no advisory committee minutes to detain us, and you have your information items circulated electronically, and you also have your status of outstanding issues on page 79. There is new business, a notice of motion moved by Councillor O'Meara and seconded by Councillor Robinson, as noted in the agenda, and in the interest of time, maybe we won't read it unless you, okay. And that therefore brings, unless there's any other, there is one, isn't there? Yes. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Kathy Duddick, seconded by Councillor Pam Demoff, and this one would deal with a sense of council urging the government to put women on banknotes. Is that a satisfactory summary? All right, thank you. And then we come to regional reports and question period regarding town boards and advisory committees, and I see none. Are there any requests for report? There's just one thing else I want to do, and that is that today I issued the following proclamation. Whereas Terry Fox began his Marathon of Hope on April 12, 1980, to increase the nation's awareness of cancer and raise funds through research to find a cure, and whereas we, as proud Canadians, come together during the month of September to help this cause at the annual Oakville Terry Fox Run to help fight this terrible disease, and whereas the Terry Fox spirit has continued on from past Chair Councillor Ralph Robinson and now to the current Chair Councillor Pam Demoff, with lead volunteer Councillor Kathy Duddick, to make the 35th annual Terry Fox event such a major success. And whereas we continue this annual tradition by raising funds and participating in this great cause that honors Terry Fox, now therefore I, Mayor Rob Burton, do hereby proclaim September 2015 as Terry Fox Month in the town of Oakville. And there's a framed copy of this for each of the 3 named councillors. And we'll give you the one tonight because you bore the duty of organizing this one. And yours are in the office. I didn't want to say in the mail. So now we need a mover and seconder for the bylaws, Councillor Elgar and Councillor Grant. And this is that the following bylaws be passed. 2015-091, a bylaw to establish the positions of screening officer and hearing officer, and 2015-101, a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of a meeting of council. All those in favor? Opposed? The bylaws are adopted. That completes our agenda, and it wasn't that bad. Thank you very much for your time and attention. It's been great working with you, and we are now adjourned.